Flores with pressure in his face, escapes the pocket, tucks the run. Across the 25, has the first down, stays in bounds and takes it all the way into the end zone.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Going to the air again. That pass is high. Oh, what a one-handed grab by Pearsall. And then he took a pop at the 30-yard line.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Beck. He's got Bowers. Bowers. Touchdown! Brock Bowers.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Jordan Travis throwing into single coverage, and the catch made. They keep firing those jump balls, and that time Keon Coleman brought it down for the touchdown. 24 yards, and Florida State leads for the first time today.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Give it to him. Training up the middle. He's in. Touchdown, Ohio State. They walk it off at Notre Dame Stadium.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
From the 19-yard line, right hash going left to right. Man in motion on the edge. Here's a pass, and it's intercepted. That's Kareni Reed, and he takes it to the house on the first play of the game. 21 yards, a pick six for Kareni Reed in Utah.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We have more evidence. Another weekend of college football is over. Another one is coming up soon, and we'll get into the Big 12 schedule this week. Also, the bangers. There aren't as many in the top 25, but we'll have those. Some quarterback news. I want to start right now with Kevin Davis out of Houston. Hugh Cat on the chat room was the winner of the TexasBeefHouse.com Pick'em contest. We had 3 finish at 10-0-1. The Notre Dame-Ohio State game split because of the spread and the way it ended, the final score. Ohio State did not have to kick the extra point. And so Kevin Davis, Hugh Cat, in the chat room, is the winner of the $100 gift card. Again, thanks to TexasBeefHouse.com and Kim Coulter. Let's start with some quarterback news. Blake Shapen, now day to day, he was out. He did not play against Texas. He's been out for quite some time. He is day to day. Whether or not he plays against UCF in Orlando remains to be seen. And then the news also in the Big 12 about Tyler Shuck, who over the weekend in Texas Tech lost to West Virginia, suffered a broken leg. He will have surgery and is on his way out about 6 to 8 weeks. On top of that, there was even concerns about Baron Morton, the talented underclassman, but he should be okay and ready to go for the game coming up against Houston on Saturday. Craig Smoak to my right, Paul Catalina to my left. We will look at the schedule. We'll have a lot to discuss. We saw the game Saturday at McLean Stadium. Texas imposed their will. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger. When their defensive linemen can outrun your running backs or quarterbacks to the sideline, you have a problem. And not to mention you couldn't move them anyway. It was emphatic. It was dominant. It was kind of what we expected based on what we said most of last week.
Yeah, and save for a couple of muff punts from Texas, which Baylor could not really capitalize on. I don't know what went well for Baylor. If I wanted to build on a positive, I don't know what I could. Honestly, I mean, I know that might be a little more negative, but they need to get down to Orlando and have some juice and some excitement. And I know that Blake Shapen is day to day. I know that's probably not what everybody wants to hear. That's better than not going to play. So day to day is an improvement, but you'd rather hear if you're Baylor ready to go and help spark the offense because they need something, and I don't know where they're going to find it.
You know, this is not a knock on what you just said, Paul, but I'm so sick of hearing about a lack of juice and excitement. It's freaking week 5 of the season. I mean, and this is dating back to last year. I am so sick of that topic, even though it remains a topic. And I don't think that was the problem on Saturday night. The juice was there. The juice was in the stands. The juice was, you could feel the buzz as the game started to, get underway. You could feel, you could hear, you could see the Texas fans draped out in burnt orange. You could see the Baylor fans, a mixture of green, gold, yellow, black, whatever. And there was a crowd there that was ready to have a party, one way or the other, and be in prime time and be on national television and put on a show. And unfortunately, only one of the teams showed up. Both fan bases showed up. One of the teams showed up. The other one didn't. And for what they did show up with, it just wasn't good enough. Like, let's just start there. They're just not very good, guys. They're just not a very good team. They can get all the juice in the world. They can get all the 1980s Russian juice in the world they want to, and it's still not going to have much of an effect on this football team because they're just not equipped to the same level of a Texas right now, and they're as far away from being equipped like a Texas as they have been in 10 years. That's NIL. That's winning. That's just mojo on recruiting trails and things like that.
Personnel evaluation.
That's all these different things. I do think it's definitely NIL is a big part of it because, that's not to excuse all the rest of it. But I do think what's different now between then? Yeah, the coaches are different. That's the biggest difference is that you can go let's go get Quinn Ewers. Let's go get an offensive line. You can do that. Now, Baylor can do that too. But they either haven't done it well enough or don't have the same support. So, that's part of it, but it's not all of it. There's a lot of juice over on that Texas side because of the belief they have in their coaches, the belief they have in their players. They're good, and it showed on Saturday night. And Baylor, in all those different categories, they just weren't up to snuff, and it showed as well on Saturday night.
It was dominant. It was emphatic. It was like someone taking human beings and turning them into pretzels and then throwing them in the grease to make sure they were ready for whatever was going to happen. Speaking of the State Fair, it's underway basically, and of course Texas OU in a couple of weeks. So let's get to some other things when it comes to the Big 12. This is the schedule for this week, and thank you for those who are already in the chat room and also the text line available, 254-339-1122. Friday night, Cincinnati, who played very well but lost to Oklahoma in their Big 12 opener at home, on the road in Provo against BYU. Also, the rest of the schedule. How about this as one of the bangers? Top 25 and top 25, and one that's got a little history lately. Kansas on the road against Texas. Houston at Texas Tech. Houston got a win this weekend. And then Baylor at UCF in the bounce house. Paul will be down there for some coverage on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Iowa State in Norman against Oklahoma, who took care of business against Cincinnati. And then West Virginia at TCU, which is a very, very interesting game with West Virginia winning the game against Tech, but TCU seems to get a little bit of that momentum back with what they did to SMU. Here are some thoughts from coaches and others on the week in the Big 12. From Lance Leipold from Kansas, when he was asked about the 2021 win at Texas, he quickly said, "Old news. I hope it's the last time I have to answer that question this week. I do. I want to focus on our team now and where we are going." Kansas was really good against BYU. Kansas looks like they're good. Do they have enough to sustain it? I think they have a lot more than they did last year when they ran out of gas and also had Daniels get hurt. KU and Texas and Austin ought to be a fun game and also could be an entertaining game too.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting to see what happens with both these teams have expectations now all of a sudden, how different that makes it. This is the first time, though, in the Kansas and Texas, Kansas has a bit of Texas's number thing, that Kansas will roll into Austin with a fan base that is aware of what can happen, good or bad. I think that might make things a little bit different atmosphere-wise, and a Texas team that doesn't appear to be sloppy and lazy.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll unpack Texas and Baylor a bit more, but you can't help but just in general be very impressed with UT and just the amount of weapons they have and just their ability on both sides of the ball to, make huge plays. And that's going to be a challenge for Kansas. But to the Jayhawks' credit, a really nice win over BYU. I think they're one of the only challengers that's kind of standing in the way of Texas right now. I mean, Oklahoma will be coming up, but KU here, Oklahoma after that. And they got a couple games following that as well. But we're almost at the halfway point now. Like, you look up and they're 4-0, and it's like who's going to step up and challenge them, because Baylor gave them no challenge on Saturday night, like 0, 1 quarter, if that. KU, I think, will be able to give them more of one, but that's still going to be a tough task for the Jayhawks. But, yeah, they had a great win over BYU in a really tough, hard-fought game, so that should be fun. And, I'm sure Texas is, as much as Leipold's saying, well, they don't want to hear about 2021's result, and I think it would be silly to be talking about that at this point. But I'm sure the Texas guys who have been on that team for a couple years are like, yeah, we're sick of hearing about the Kansas jokes, and we'd love to go out there and punch them in the mouth. And, hey, doesn't hurt that they're, getting some love as well. So that's going to be a fun game. And, I don't know how close it'll be in the end, but hopefully Kansas gives them a run for their money.
West Virginia, remember a lot of media had them picked dead last. 4 games into the season, they ranked number 1 in the Big 12 and number 7 nationally with a couple of different stats that matter. Third down defense, 25% conversion. 16 third down stops by West Virginia against Texas Tech, the most by a Mountaineers defense since 2011 in a win against Pittsburgh. And so their defense is playing stingy. That, of course, will get tested with what TCU brings to the table. So there's a defensive nugget from West Virginia.
Good for the Mountaineers. Really good win for them against Texas Tech. That was a brutal loss for Tech, but it was a really good win for Neil Brown. And he said they weren't going to finish last in the Big 12 the way it's trajectory-wise right now. They won't finish last in the Big 12. I think Baylor, Houston, maybe a couple of others could have a say in that. Of course, West Virginia could always slide, but with that defense playing the way that it is, that's going to keep them in some games. Now, the offense is going to have to muster a lot more than they have at times. You're not going to be able to throw for less than 100 yards and win a lot of football games no matter how good your defense. Unless you're turning into Iowa. Maybe you're turning into Iowa or something, but I don't think that's the plan. So you're going to have to get more out of that passing game and just the offense in general. But, yeah, their defense is playing really well, and that was big for them to turn around. They're 3-1 out of that first month, for as much as was made about that, and the only loss was to a top team in Penn State in Happy Valley. So this has gone even better than it possibly could have been expected, in my opinion. Maybe you had them at 2-2. I know I didn't have them at 3-1 at this point. I had them at 2-2 at best.
Yep.
And I don't think I had them beating Tech. But obviously Tech's not what they've. Or they're not what we thought that they might be at this stage.
And they weren't even that with Shuck was healthy.
No, they weren't that with Shuck either. But, I do hate that for them that he's hurt again. You wonder what kind of decisions are in his future, just because this isn't just like a couple, this is like 3 years in a row where he's had to deal with something along these lines. So that hurt, but that's not why West Virginia won by any means, to your point. And just a brutal start on the other hand for Texas Tech.
I'm happy for them. That they've come through.
I really
because
appreciate the way Neil Brown handled that on media day. He was pissed off.
Look, anybody was probably saying 1-3 for the first week would have been what they thought, based on how this team was looking. It felt very moribund and all the things that were going on. But man, to be 3-1, and again, getting punched in the face by Penn State is something that most of the people on Penn State's schedule are going to do. So you're not exactly in exclusive company there. And you've adjusted to strife too. Not just, they're not 3-1 and everything's gone perfect for them. They've lost their quarterback. Craig said it, their offense is kind of blah, but their defense has really gutted out and stepped up. And Texas Tech didn't look at anything like you would. If you would have said Texas Tech on a bad day, I wouldn't even have picked that for Texas Tech on a bad day. That was really bad.
They didn't have much to get. I guess you could say, speaking of juice, they did not have much of themselves. The AP Top 25 is out. Of course, there's the coaches poll. There's always slightly a little bit different. Not much. There's Georgia, Michigan, Texas at 3. Ohio State with that dramatic win against Notre Dame in what was a bad moment for Marcus Freeman and the Irish, because they didn't have enough people on the field, and they ran right where there was a missing position on the right defensive end of Notre Dame. FSU survives. A scary Saturday. We discussed that quite a bit as well on Saturday's pregame, but those are the top 5. We'll get to some others in a minute.
Yeah, at least Dave Aranda and company from, the Texas or the Utah game, when they didn't have 11 men on the field for back-to-back plays, and we were like, man, what the heck? How does that happen? And then Notre Dame does it like 2 weeks later. So I guess it happens more regularly than we thought. But, yeah, that was a really I mean, gritty win for Ohio State no matter the circumstances. I mean, they're not there going, oh, well, there was 10 guys in the field, let's not score. I mean, that was a tough down-to-the-wire game that looked like it was going to be, the Irish standing tall in the end, and the Buckeyes got it done, so kudos to them. Texas obviously didn't have to really break much of a sweat. Georgia is Georgia, and Florida State, shown some moxie, and we're able to go out and take care of business against a Clemson team that's had a lot of success against them. So that was big time for Mike Norvell and the Noles.
Garrett, approximately how deep into that Florida State Clemson game did we all get a text of naughty language, give up, it's over?
The white
It was pretty
flag.
early. It was pretty early.
Like maybe the 3 drives into the game.
Yeah.
But the Seminoles have the best, most impressive win so far through the first, 4 or 5. They've played 5 games. They're off this week. Also, top 25, a couple of other nuggets I want to get. If you look at the top 10, you have Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are all not only in the Big Ten, they're all 3 in the Big Ten on the eastern side of the divisions. You have the Pac-12, of course, with both Washington, USC, Oregon, and Utah, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We know what Oregon did to Deion and the Colorado Buffaloes and kind of smoked them pretty good, and now we'll see how Colorado bounces back against USC. There's Oklahoma 14, Alabama with a win against Ole Miss. Not a lot of people thought that. Well, not a lot. There were some that wondered if they'd get that done. They did. And then the Oregon State, Washington State, great for Washington State. Like both of those teams, rooting for both of them myself, but they flipped pretty much. Washington State now 16, Oregon State, the Beavers, at 19.
Cam Ward is fun to watch, man. He started out just like a house on fire in that game. I thought that was great. The Pac-12 is wild, and I can't wait to see how they separate that out. Washington is maybe the best team in the Pac-12. I mean, they have an argument to be the best team in the Pac-12, but because they haven't played Deion yet, they don't have Caleb Williams, and they're not doing it without their quarterback like Utah. I think they maybe fallen into.
Are they not the best team maybe in the country?
They might. I mean, they are legitimately really, really good. They maybe haven't had the game, opponent yet to show that. They had Cal dispensed very quickly in that game, and we're seeing a different kind of top 10, which I think is great and proves what maybe that parity is coming in college football faster than we were all ready for, at least parity by college football standards.
Well, I don't know if you could have a top 5 with more blue-bloodish representation than you could turn a couple of around, but I mean that top 5 is pretty blue-bloody right there.
Yeah, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Ohio State, FSU, and not far behind Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and USC.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that top 5 is pretty salty. I mean they've got the Pac-12 set up to have some monster top 10 versus top 10 type matchups coming up here in the next few weeks, and yeah, I mean how do you separate those teams until they start playing each other? So great job by Utah to get a win without Cam Rising again, and to do it and do it without too much of a hardship. They just keep going about their business. It's so impressive. But yeah, that Utah, Oregon, SC, Washington clump. Washington's got a sensational offense. I mean, it is ridiculous how that offense is operating right now. So that's going to be all sorts of fireworks and fun. Bama, great win for them over Ole Miss. I doubted a little bit. I just thought Kiffin had nothing up his sleeve. What was that? I guess that's why they had so much gamesmanship, because they realized we're probably not going to beat them. So let's try to get in their heads and mess my head up in the process. So next time I'm just not going to try to overthink that one, but good job by Bama. Oklahoma, I think it's amazing that their defense has progressed as quickly as it has. Red River is going to be really fun here in a couple of weeks, so long as they both handle their business this weekend, which, as you pointed out with Texas and KU, that could get interesting, but Red River's shaping up to be, I don't know, a super matchup, but just a different feel from both sides of the teams. I don't know. It's just, this is a different Oklahoma team. This is not the Lincoln Riley offenses. This is winning with defense and Danny Stutzman having huge games and things like that. So it's definitely different. But yeah, Washington State, Oregon State was a lot of fun, and I know you need to go through the rest of them here.
No, that's good. Fresno State, they right there at 25. Hey, let's make sure we include somebody who's a group of 5 with Fresno State right there at 25.
Well, good for KU to get in the poll.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're the only non-Oklahoma, Texas Big 12 team that's now in that poll. That was a big joke last week, right? Because those were the only 2, I believe, because somebody fell out.
K-State.
K-State fell out. And so, yeah, Kansas now in there at 24 and a big opportunity. They could jump up into the teens with a win this weekend against Texas. So nice and deserving of them to be in there. But you get that batch of SEC teams rounding out there at the very end. Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, all there. Ole Miss. So 4 of like the last 6 of them.
20, 21, 22, 23.
5 of them jump in.
Yeah.
But
all right,
that's okay, though.
A couple of notes about Ohio State. Their win against against Notre Dame on the road. They have now won 13 of their last 14 games against ranked opponents on the road. So whether 9 or 12 or 6 or wherever, that's a very impressive stat. And they've now won 6 straight against Notre Dame, tied for the 3rd longest streak against Notre Dame in the AP poll era, trailing by 8 straight by USC and 8 straight by Michigan State. That's from the college football blitz.
Ohio State did something that good teams do, is that all after what would have been a back-breaking, game-ending mistake, they took advantage of it. Notre Dame in the last drive was just this close to having a pick that would have sealed it and sealed it completely. Your foot there. And after that, Kyle McCord, instead of being like the freshman, like, oh my God, I almost threw a pick. Oh my God, I almost threw a pick, steps in and throws a dart and gets them down, set up to win that game. But it's kind of like when an error happens in baseball in the playoffs. You're like, okay, well, that's not going to be good. Notre Dame gave Ohio State that extra out, and Ohio State took it.
That's exactly what they did. Now, here are the top 25 bangers this week. That includes also that Kansas game at the bottom against Texas. You have Friday night's game, Pac-12 Utah on the road against Oregon State, and Oregon State trying to bounce back at home. Missouri on the road against Ole Miss. Notre Dame, after the loss to Ohio State, they have to get right back up and play a team in Duke that's just sitting there playing well at 17 in what is an ACC-type game, of course, but Notre Dame, of course, we know independent. Those are the bangers of ranked against ranked this week in college football.
Well, hopefully it's a lot like a couple weeks ago when it was a similarly light schedule as far as ranked matchups go, and it turned out to be one heck of a weekend. That's what you can hope for because, just on paper, not a lot of great ranked versus ranked games, but like I said, 2 weeks ago that was the case, and it turned out to be all sorts of fireworks. So that's what I'm hoping for.
All right, couple other notes. Iowa, remember last year the struggle, almost memes over their offense and how pathetic it was or how inept it was, and then you had a little bit of help earlier this year. They looked a little bit better, but this is what Penn State's defense did to them. Look at the total yards at the top. 61. 19 yards rushing, 42 yards passing. 309, very well distributed by Penn State on both rushing and passing. They turned it over 3 times. Penn State cruised to the win, and Iowa's offense just had no chance. Remind me of what Baylor could not do against Texas.
That's about the same, if not worse. Difference being they've been doing that now for a long time, and I know that college football is all fun and memes and things like that, and there's a bunch of various accounts that are all kind of the same thing, that they'll spit out some graphic about how funny Iowa's offense is. But if I'm an Iowa fan, I'm pissed off at this point. Enough of the funny, let's joke about Ferentz and his kid and calling plays and all of that. And I know not all that's joking. Some of that is you cry or you laugh through the tears kind of a deal for Iowa fans. At this point, though, that's unacceptable. Am I crazy? But
no.
How is that? How do you keep trotting that out week
drive.
after?
That's a decent scoring drive.
How do you keep trotting that pathetic offense out? Week after week. I don't get it at this point. I get why they, changes will come in the offseason, I suppose. He's definitely not going to reach those benchmarks that were settled on in the offseason, but the fact that this is still a thing is just, it's, I don't know. If I was an Iowa fan, I would be raising holy hell right now over the offense that they've been putting out there on the field.
Yeah, because Iowa, it's not like they were ever one that's going to put up 450 to 500 yards a game, but they were very consistent and good enough where they played really good defense, great special teams, and they won games. And now the offense is just so hard for them to win anything.
It's beyond a joke. It was a joke, and it was haha, let's poke fun. And now it's just beyond that. Now it's just sad. Now it's just inexcusable and sad, and I don't find any humor in it really anymore because it's so sad. But
okay. No, I agree. It is. Smokey Bear, Ask who had the most impressive loss. Can you have an impressive loss?
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't see one.
I mean, you can play great games. I mean, Oregon State played a great game. Clemson played a great game. Notre Dame played a great game, but they didn't win. I mean, so those are three excellent football games that, that just didn't come out on the right side for you. But I don't know. That's hard for. I don't know. Maybe I don't have the right mindset.
There are no moral victories, although maybe you do if you play one of the top boys, top alphas really, really well.
I guess maybe Notre Dame just because of the way you lost that game. But I'm with you. You don't hand out trophies for losses and all that. So I don't know that there's a moral victory out there. But I mean, if you're looking at like what loss doesn't seem as bad, I guess maybe Notre Dame's. But I mean, it counts the same as a bad loss. So I don't know that really makes you feel any better about it.
From Jon Wilner, he's going to join us in the show today on Washington State's win and also the Pac-12 and where they are now a month into the season. Pac-12 storylines. Utah, with that win, they're 4-0, 1-0 in the conference against UCLA, who can put up some points. They have 3 Power 5 wins, and that is without their starting quarterback still yet to play. He thought, or at least there was a thought he would play Saturday. He did not, and Utah won anyway. 4-0 and 3 Power 5 victories for Kyle Whittingham and Utah. Now, Baylor. It was bad. It was almost 7-3 at one point. And you're like, okay. We all had, in fact, Garrett said 52-9. I think I said Texas would win 38-20. I was right on half of that. How I even thought 20, I don't know. Even with the muff punches Craig mentioned, they couldn't take advantage of anything in the red zone. So today, just a quick clip from Dave Aranda at his media session. Listen, the natives are restless. People are mad. They're angry. They should be because they're 1-3. And I think it would still be that way even if they had beaten Texas State, but that even added more insult to injury to start the year. Dave Aranda, I asked him a question about looking at him as a head coach.
Dave, despite whatever you are as a person, whoever you are, when you look at yourself in the mirror as a football coach, as a head coach, what has gone wrong? And how long will it take to fix it? You kind of answered that a little bit just now.
Yeah, I think we have to be able to look at, I appreciate the question, we have to be able to look at the things that we're not performing well in, and we have to, take any of the emotion out of it. And we have to look at, whether that's a coaching error or it's a personnel issue or it's we're asking too much here or we're not devoting enough time here. We have to get all the emotion out of it and just address the kind of the reality of it and fix it, And I think things like that can, it's as simple and as difficult as that, because a lot of times emotion gets into it. But, I love this staff and I love the fact that they are all in and they want to address things and they don't hold back and they want to get better. And so I feel like that's the journey that we're on.
How has the staff reacted to this start? I mean, is there some truth serum that has to be looked at?
Yes.
And do they understand the consequences?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And they need to because the wide zone is not working. The talent doesn't appear to be there. They've got a bunch of guys coming back this week, but something is missing, and it's not just the fact that they're not energetic and passionate and emotional.
No, it's talent.
Yeah.
And I will stop short of listing off individual positions that they need to get better at because I don't want to, just call people out. But they missed on guys. They've missed on guys, and then there's guys that maybe they haven't missed on but aren't there yet. So right now, you're in the position of not good enough to compete in the Big 12 to win the Big 12 title, which you did just 2 years ago. So how do you go in just 2 years from that to this, and how do you fix it and reboot it? That's the big question that Baylor has to answer. But right now, they have to get better players.
Yeah, I did a couple of Austin radio interviews last week, and it was kind of surprising to me, and I guess I just assumed that people had been watching all the games like I try to do, and what I found was that the guys that I talked to from the Texas side of things really hadn't seen much of Baylor. Granted, I mean, who's trying to go check out them versus Long Island? I get it, but they kind of assumed that this was just your typical Dave Aranda Baylor team that they've been watching, and not so much the last half of last year, but like before all hell kind of started breaking loose. And I told, both shows that I was on of like, guys, I don't know how they're going to score in this game. Like, barring like a big play, I don't know how they're going to score in this game. I don't know how they're going to stop Texas offense in this game. I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know how they're going to keep it close, barring like a bunch of things going their way. And a couple things went their way, and they could just absolutely do nothing with it. And Saturday night was the worst case scenario, I think, in many ways, because you were outclassed, outplayed, outcoached, and yeah, you were out-talented. You're always going to typically always be that way when you're playing Texas, but it's just that the gap is so much larger than it's been in 10 years, which I've said now a bunch of times, but it's true. It's some of it's NIL because that's one of the major changes in that time frame, but I also think it's that one program's going this way and the other one's going this way, and that was evident on Saturday night. You can't only blame energy for so long before it's like, yeah, maybe the players just aren't up to snuff, and maybe the coaching's not the best, and maybe all of those things are the things that need to be fixed, as opposed to, the bounce in their step or the blackout in the crowd or the whatever the case may be. That was my big issue with the blackout last week, because I understood fans trying to get hyped up, but it's like, that's not the problem. Like, the problem is on the field, and you wearing black's not changing any of that.
Yeah, Bryce Petty's not walking out of the locker room because you're wearing black.
Right, so like I got it, like you want the experience or whatever, but like, I don't know. It wasn't going to change much on the field, and that was very apparent very quickly in that game on Saturday. So, yeah, they're going the opposite direction. And so when I told those guys in Austin radio that, I could tell some of them were like, oh, man, I didn't realize it was like that bad. And then I haven't talked to them since, but I imagine they didn't take them long to watch on Saturday night before they went, oh, man. And then based on social media and just some people I talked to, there's a lot of people across the country right now that haven't watched a lot of what's gone down. They're going, man, what's happened to that program? What's happened with Dave Aranda? And where was this team that 2 years ago there's a lot of confusion. And look, if the outsiders are confused, it doesn't help that the people who are the quote-unquote insiders, the ones that are close to the program, are equally confused as to what exactly is going on and how it's gone this far this fast.
Yeah, there's a lot of myths about wearing black. Like, some people say it's slimming, but it's not if you're corpulent. So, like, you can't hide everything with it. The other thing about it is, like, just because you're wearing black doesn't mean, like, oh, man, crap, Smoak, that was really fast. What's that? That guy over there is wearing a black shirt, and it really energized me. Like, those things, and like that collides all at once, because losing highlights all the rifts in the fans and all that stuff that you have with the university or team or whatever. But yeah, it just makes it all worse when it's a pretty simple thing. Texas has much better players than Baylor. You want to know? Texas has better players. Texas State might have better players. I mean, like, those things happen.
They at least had better strategy and scheme, and they had those things.
I'll tell you this, and this is not that there aren't others on the defensive line for Texas. My God, Alfred Collins, Devondre Sweat, Vernon Broughton. There was a play, and I think it might have been Richard Reese. I don't remember exactly who the running back was, but there was a play. This is even when the game was like maybe even, 28-3. Alfred Collins is on the left side of the defensive line for UT. Baylor runs to the near side, their home side, what is a pretty innocuous, maybe even a pitch play, a sweep. And about the time that it looked like Richard Reese might get more than 3 to 5 yards, which would have been a long run in that game Saturday, here comes someone flying in to tackle him with authority. It was the left defensive end in a play that meant nothing in a game that was almost over, flying around to the football, making a play, wearing a 95, who probably weighs 100 pounds or more heavier than who he tackled. They were better. The defensive front is perhaps not just the difference this year for UT, but their defense is real. And again, somebody will test them. Maybe it will be Kansas. I don't know. But goodness, when their defensive line is better laterally than you are as a running back or a quarterback, and that's not to be flippant, then you have a problem, and especially when you could not run at them either. So there we are with that. It's going to be fun to look at what happens. Dave Aranda feels the heat. There's no question. I know a lot of people are, who's the next coach or whatever. I don't see anything imminent, but right now there is no question a lot of heat right now in that program, but we were told there was even 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely heat. There's no avoiding that. How realistic it is that could turn into a full-blown fire by the end of the year, I guess we'll have to see, because it's only week 5. But, I mean, they're certainly trending in the direction of there being a lot more sparks. And the thing about having a young football team, which he's pointed to, I don't think as an excuse. I think that you look at that team and there are – in the case of Texas, a lot of veteran players on that team, and there's a lot of not so veteran players on this Baylor team in many cases, or guys in positions that they need them to be farther along than they are, and they're just not, whereas Texas is. They're very veteran-laden. That's part of the difference, but the problem for Dave Aranda is you can't snap your fingers and age those guys overnight, and you don't necessarily have 2 years to get Sawyer Robertson to where he needs to be or get the offensive line to where they need to be because you've struggled so much. You've ticked some time off already, and you can't just go, well, we'll just let it develop over. The fans are impatient now. The natives are restless, and they don't have 2 years to wait to watch you stumble and fumble around in the night and lose historically to rivals before getting it right. There's just not that patience level there right now. So I don't know how that all comes to a head, but the ingredients are there for this to get worse before it gets better.
No, I agree. It really is. But there we are. We've tried to summarize. We have not been able to mention everybody, but for the most part, we tried. There was one of the game that we'll get to. We do have a guest coming up throughout the show today, from Jon Wilner to much more, Brandon Marcello, also J.J. Joe, Phil Bennett, and a few others as we look around the country. Now, Terrel Bernard of Baylor, who's now with the Buffalo Bills, who they embarrassed. They smoked Washington in that game on Sunday. He becomes the former Big 12 champion, the first NFL player to record 2 sacks, an interception, and a fumble recovery in a single game since the great Brian Urlacher, Hall of Famer, back in 2007.
Yeah, he's really exploded on the scene for the Bills this year. I remember checking depth charts as they were coming out of camp, and I saw that he was going to be starting. It didn't surprise me, but then I went and, started reading some Bills websites about what they were saying about Terrel Bernard. And Soki, you guys know this about when you cover training camps, there's always like a guy that when you read everybody, like you hop around like different writers' blogs and things, there's always somebody like the Cowboys this year was Deuce Vaughn and Jalen Brooks. And there's always a guy that kind of keeps popping up. And sometimes that pans out and sometimes it doesn't. But Terrel Bernard got mentioned a lot. Like a lot of Bills writers like, it's Terrel Bernard. It seems like he's kind of grasped the defense here.
Yeah, he was fighting for the starting linebacker spot in camp and had dealt with some injuries, but was able to, win that and has, put on a show as of yesterday. But also, I think the past couple of weeks, he's and just this offseason and start of this season has made some significant jumps to where, there was debate about how does he fit in or how is he going to work out and la-di-da-di-da. And I think now you've got a lot of fans who are like, yeah, he's the dude. Let's go. He's playing great. Like, yeah, we've got our guy there in the middle of the defense. So, it's very early and that could all change for a variety of different reasons. But for right now, yeah, he's holding up he's carrying his own weight, and he's making plays, and he had a big impact on that game yesterday, and I think it's just great to see. The one concern with him is being a little bit undersized, but that doesn't seem to be an issue at the moment, so that's great, and just hope he can stay healthy and keep it up because he's a great young man and a fun player to watch, and obviously had a lot of fun on Sunday.
One final thing before we break and come back with Steven Johnson on TCU, and they have West Virginia this week. There has been a lot of talk the first month of the season, and deservedly so, with what Colorado had been doing, with what Deion had done in a short amount of time. But Oregon just boat raced them from the snap, maybe before the snap. We've seen the speech, if you have it, with Dan Lanning. There was still a little bit of like pregame, I guess you could say, showmanship from both teams. That ended Colorado right there. They'll play USC this week, and with USC struggling at Arizona State, who knows what can happen. But, man, was Oregon ready, focused, and emphatic, and sent a message to everybody, not just to Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised that people are surprised that this game went either way that it could have. Because, look, if Colorado found a way to keep the momentum and the confidence they were playing with going, I don't think it's that much of a surprise. But when you look at, like, that's in the, okay, well, they could do that. But when you look at what Oregon's been, who they are, and what they've built to now in Dan Lanning's second year and who he is, yeah, this should not have been that much of a surprise, especially given the fact that Colorado's two biggest problems are their offensive and defensive lines. Shadur Sanders keeps getting sacked. they can't run the ball, and then they can't stop the run on the other side. So that's not going to fix in a week. So you're going to wind up against some matchups where you can't coach around that, and Oregon was that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's just so high-powered that they not only were able to expose those weaknesses, but they were able to, like, highlight and just dwell on and expose and then expose again and expose again throughout that game. Really impressive showing from the Ducks. I know there's a lot of just feelings now in the air whenever Colorado gets brought up, which is unfortunate, but, you know, they're also bringing some new eyeballs to the game, and that's great. I'm sure that was a huge rating for that game regardless of the blowout, and that will continue on, and, you know, the Buffs will still get plenty of attention, and I know they've got, Big Noon again this week with USC, and so they're not going anywhere just because they lost the game. But they, you know, learned some lessons about where they are as a team. I'm sure that they'll go back to the drawing board and work on this defensively or that offensively or whatever they need to do. I don't know that you cure, like, the offensive line, for example, overnight, and you somehow protect Shedeur a lot better than you have been basically in every game. But, you know, there's things to work on, and I think that was always the case. It's just that, you know, it's one of those things where if you're winning, you can kind of cover up some of the other weaknesses or you don't need to focus on them as much. But now that you've lost, it's like, yeah, let's tear it open and look apart at the patient and see what we need to fix up. And so there's some things to fix. They're still going to win some more games. I don't think all this steam has been let out of the wind's been let out of their sails. Some of it has. But, you know, credit to Oregon. They went out there and did their thing, and they knew the stage that they were on and the team that they were playing. And when they got the opportunity to drive that stake in, that's what they were going to do, and they were going to leave as big of an impression as possible. So they talked the talk and they walked the walk, and now it's time for the Buffaloes to go back to the drawing board and get ready for another huge game against USC. And if they can go win that, then look, all that momentum comes flying back because they'll have, you know, secured a big-time win. But, yeah, Oregon – definitely the better team on Saturday.
I'm still happy for what Dion and Colorado have done, but sometimes you run into somebody that's better, and we've seen that a lot over the last weekend, and Colorado now will have to turn around and host USC. It will again get a tremendous amount of coverage, as most likely the rest of the year. We'll check in with today TCU. Also, J.J. Joe on what he saw with Texas and Baylor, but also moving forward, Phil Bennett on a lot of things college football, and then Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports on the college weekend and this weekend coming up, and Jon Wilner on what so far we've seen in the Pac-12. You have one more thing to say?
No, just that, you know, that Colorado-Oregon result, if you had said that before the year, before games started being played, you know, there probably still would have been some that eyes bulged of like, wow, that kind of a beatdown, but then again, that would have been more in line with what you thought as opposed to what people thought going into this game because of what Colorado did to start the season. So they actually made that a game where you're like, oh, man, is there a chance they could because of what they did? But, yeah, if you had said that before the ball had gotten rolling and they had started picking up steam, I don't think people would have really batted too much of an eye for that to be the result. So I don't think that they're that far off of where they were always supposed to be. It's just they got off to a much better start than a lot of people expected.
When we come back, Stephen Johnson on TCU seeming to kind of get their momentum back. We'll see what happens after they took care of Houston. And, of course, now West Virginia coming to town. The Mountaineers coming off their wins against Pitt, and also the win against Texas Tech. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, another week of where you can get tailgate food or regular groceries of what you need when you're going home at night, what you may need to watch TV at home, or if you do have a tailgate, Baylor out of town, but a lot of teams, of course, around the state will be tailgating. They have select, choice, and prime brisket from $3.70 a pound to $5.15 a pound. St. Louis style ribs at $2.59 a pound, and also pork spare ribs at $1.90 a pound. Baby back pork ribs at $2.75 a pound, and jalapeno cheese pork links at $2.99 a pound, plus chicken drumsticks available at 99 cents a pound. A full-service butcher shop, a full-service bakery, all of what you need for anything really you're going to go home and cook or something you're going to have a lot of little stuff going on as you watch college football throughout the upcoming weekend. They have the charcoal, the pellet fuel, the seasonings, the marinade, the cold beer and wine. It is Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all
tell your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
During Jeep Adventure Days, save big on 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee Limited with values up to $5,500. Or 10% off MSRP on new Jeep Gladiators on all trim levels. Or 10% off MSRP on a new Jeep Compass at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Stephen Johnson covers TCU. The Frogs lost that opening game to Colorado. Then they have taken care of business against teams that you would think they should, against especially Nichols and then Houston. And then SMU, you don't know. You kind of wondered about that, but TCU was very strong, winning 34-17. Stephen, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul. And I'm David Smoak. Do they have at least what you think is a little bit of that mojo back?
Yeah, I think so, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, if you go back to the last 3 weeks, keep in mind the competition, but they've only given up 2 offensive touchdowns over the last 3 games. And one of those came late in the fourth quarter when the game was pretty much already decided. Now you're starting to see the defense play like a defense that has 7 or 8 starters back from last year. And the offense isn't perfect yet, but, they're still averaging close to 40 points per game, and they don't even feel like they've hit their stride yet. So it seems like this team is starting to play its best football at the right time, and it's kind of put that Colorado game behind them.
How much was that Colorado game on? They didn't have any film on anything really, and they got caught up. They were the victims of a moment.
I'm sure it was a big part of it, and you talk to Sonny at times afterwards, and he acknowledges that. In the offseason, instead of watching one team, they're watching 20, 25, 30. However many teams, however many games they had to watch. And I think that was a challenge. But more or less, TCU would tell you they just didn't play well that day. They got to the red zone. They had 2 interceptions thrown into the red zone. Griffin Kell normally one of the best kickers in the Big 12 misses a field goal, and then like we're talking about their experienced defense, over 20 missed tackles. Just, as good as Shadur played that game, over half of his yards came, after the catch, which goes to show you how explosive those receivers are and how bad of a job TCU did tackling. So they definitely were a victim of the moment, but honestly, I think they're kind of kicking themselves more than, thinking it was anything that necessarily Colorado did that day, excuse me.
Stephen, was there any extra gasoline poured on the fire of this rivalry because of the fact that, it's been announced they're not going to play this after 2025, the fact that SMU is going to the ACC? Was there anything all that different from your experience? I know you haven't been covering, the Iron Skillet for years and years at this point, but what was the festivities like?
I thought it was a little bit more intense last year, and, maybe, SMU fans are a little bit more vocal on social media now, but I thought last year, when the game was over in University Park or whatever, the festivities, I think that was the biggest crowd in their history. I could feel that intensity last year. This year, we're in the press box, and for a while, it looked like it was going to be a kind of a sparse crowd, and there weren't a lot of SMU fans there either. So, like I said, there was a lot of talking on Twitter, but I didn't really see that translate to a big SMU presence or to really intensify the game at all this year.
When you look at Chandler Morris and what he's doing, is this kind of him showing a little bit about what he was going to be last year?
I think so. And obviously for him, before he got hurt, this would have been his fourth or fifth start going back last year. So now he's kind of getting some of that experience that he's supposed to get last year. And he has his up and down. We've seen him kind of struggle with turnovers, but it seems like he's getting better and better each week. You're seeing what he can do as a dual threat. He's not the physical runner like Max was, but I think he's a little bit more agile. He's more willing to kind of touch the ball down quicker and scramble with it. We've been seeing some of the touch. And like I said, he's getting really close. The entire offense, actually, they're going from really good to great. So I think Chandler's kind of showing why he won the quarterback job last year, but there's still room for growth.
What do you think is the thing that's keeping the offense from hitting on all cylinders, even though they've done well?
I just think it's execution, man. They're not great in the red zone just yet. Some of that, I don't know if it's play calling. I mean, there was one time they get down to the red zone. The first play call they call was a jet sweep to Savion Williams, who great athlete, but it's not necessarily a guy you think will probably be featured on the jet sweep. So, boom, you lose 2 or 3 yards, and now you're behind the chains, and, you got to settle for a field goal. So they've been settling for a lot of field goals when they get to the red zone. Before the last game, obviously, turnovers were an issue. I think they had a red zone turnover in 3 straight games before, obviously, this past Saturday. So I think right now it's just execution, from both the coaching's play calling perspective and also the players, man. There are still a couple times with Chandler, especially when he's trying to throw those seam routes kind of over the middle of the field. He just needs to take a little off of it. I think there were maybe 1 or 2 passes on Saturday where if he just use a little bit more placement over power, we're probably talking about 2 more touchdowns as opposed to that game being kind of close in the fourth quarter. So I just think execution, and it should be expected. You got a bunch of new starters, bunch of new pieces. So I think execution and chemistry is still an ongoing process, but they've still been looking good regardless of that.
Speaking of that chemistry, Stephen, how have you seen some of those guys start to sort of emerge and separate and find themselves, especially in that wide receiving core? Has there been anything noticeable development-wise recently, like a Jalen Robertson or a J.P. Richardson, guys starting to establish themselves a bit more these last couple games?
Well, it looks like Jalen Robinson will be the kind of the starter to see the outside receiver spot along with Savion Williams. I think they were kind of deciding it's going to be one Thompson, it's going to be Dalen Wright. But he started the last 2 games at that spot, and he had a really strong first half against SMU as well, too. I think just his explosiveness, we know how fast he is. I think the staff wanted the guy in the lineup that was kind of similar to Darius Davis. He kind of had that ability to kind of take the top off the defense. Mm-hmm. So it looks like he's beginning to separate himself. John Paul Richardson, I think, is still kind of having the best year, but he's not all the way healthy. Sonny hasn't really elaborated on what exactly he's dealing with, but I think he's been the most productive receiver despite kind of dealing with some nicks and knacks that have kind of kept him from being 100%.
Last thing, Steve. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to go ahead.
TCU now at home against West Virginia. West Virginia's defense has carried them the early part of the year, and they had the nice win against Texas Tech. I don't know if they have been tested by another offense that can put up some points, because Tech doesn't seem to be that right now. But your thoughts about what you've seen from West Virginia, because they were a team picked to finish last in the Big 12, and right now they're 3-1.
Oh, well, they definitely have performed above their preseason expectations, and I'm sorry to the fans in Waco with the way Baylor's been looking. I think we have a new team that's kind of occupying their last spot place.
Yep.
But definitely the defense they're one of the best third down defense in the country. So now teams are having a hard time sustaining drives against them. Like I said, it's been impressive to see what they've been doing on that side of the ball. They had Pittsburgh to 6 points, Texas Tech to 13. I know their quarterback got hurt. But still, anytime you're going to hold a Power 5 team under 20 points, it's a great day by your defense. But Penn State kind of had its way with them, and I know the Nittany Lions was really good, man. So the defense didn't really have much of an answer for them. So I think it's kind of a situation, are they as good as they've looked the last 2 weeks? Maybe not. Were they as bad as they were in their first game against Penn State? Probably not. So I think they're somewhere in the middle where they're an above-average defense that has some strength, especially on third down. But if I'm still TCU, I'm going into this game with the expectation that we should be able to at least get around 30 points on this defense. And with the quarterback situation in West Virginia, I think if they can get 28 or above, they should kind of come out of Saturday with another win.
And, Steven, final thing on this, a little extra ammo or oomph for this game. Is it a blackout, correct, this Saturday night at the Carter?
Yes, it is. It's a blackout, 7 p.m. prime time game. So TCU has had some great attendance so far this week. So I'm expecting another great crowd on Saturday.
Thank you for the time, Stephen. As always, Stephen Johnson covers TCU for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Before we hit the top of the 4 o'clock hour, actually when we come back at the top of the hour, we have a couple of super chats for us to get to from Kim and also Tu Changs.
Yeah, I think TCU losing to Colorado kind of made you go, oh, let's just push them to the side, right out of the gates. And they've played well since then. And, as you said, Colorado was kind of like, what were you going to get in that first week of the season? And they went and won a fun game. But I think Chandler Morris has settled in and played well. I think they're still sorting through their weapons. Didn't even touch on JoJo Earl there, because they added so many guys this offseason that it's interesting to kind of see how they're trying to find their footing, whether it's Robinson or Richardson or JoJo Earl or whoever. But I think TCU is going to be a tough out for anybody moving forward, and I think they are kind of flying under the radar a little bit because Texas and Oklahoma are sort of up at that top right now. But the Frogs are still a plenty dangerous team if they keep improving each week. So that'll be. I expect them to win at home this weekend. Even though West Virginia's had a hot hand of late, I still don't trust West Virginia's offense that much. But who knows? It's going to be a fun atmosphere, it sounds like. When we come back, a couple of super chats. We'll get to that. And, of course, around the corner, a loaded up next hour or two with guests. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff, the partners, have put together a tremendous business to help you, the customer. And yes, they are a business in Central Texas, in Waco, in the Central Texas marketplace, just off of I-35 on 35 in Waco. Now, what they can do, they have a state-of-the-art MRI machine. They will find out the evidence of what something and why something hurts. What is it? And if your doctor might think it's something else in your knee, your back, your shoulder, whoever, wherever, they'll find it. And then if it's not what the doctor might think it is, then you still get an answer and then maybe a different type of treatment or solution. And the best part, other than finding out the injury, is $497 or less every single time. And the average is $1,100 for an MRI around the country. But at Ideal MRI, it's $497. It can be less. They'll help file the insurance papers and much more. And when I've called them, when I've needed them, they've called me to set up an appointment. It has not taken long at all. I get in, I get the evidence. My doctor does too. And it's $497 or less at idealmri.com.
Right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgan Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgan Ford. Bird Colgan Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at UnitePrivateNetworks.com.
Busy 4 o'clock hour. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. Jon Wilner on the Pac-12 start to the year. And then J.J. Joe looks back at the autopsy of Texas 38, Baylor 6. Here are two super chats. Kim Coulter, thank you, Texas Tech fan. Just got here and thought I heard you talking about me and my team. They're simply not very good. Laugh out loud. I think we were talking about you because it's Texas Beef House gift card, but we did talk about Texas Tech, and you're right. They're simply not very good.
Yeah, they're just not what they were cracked up to be in the offseason as far as right now. They can, of course, get better as the season goes along like any other team, but they could also get worse in theory. Now with Shuck sidelined for what looks like a couple months, I guess he could potentially come back late in the year, but, for now it's Barron, Morton, or bust, and let's see what he's got. But, that was something that I know some fans were clamoring for, even though it wasn't necessarily the issue, but just some fans like, hey, Morton needs to come in there and, spice up the offense. So now you'll get your opportunity to see that, and you'll get to see it for several games. Just hope that he can be protected, and stay healthy, because they don't have a lot now at this point to turn around and go grab out of the cabinet. They need him to stay upright and finish out the rest of this season. So, yeah, it's been a bummer, just like it has for Baylor and various other teams throughout the country. There was a lot of hype coming in. Still got some big games coming up that could, soothe some feelings, but yeah, this 1-3 was not at all what the start of that season was cracked up to be.
Also, two Changs, thank you for the super chat. Pac-12 is the best 4 teams ranked above Alabama. No, they are. They're loaded up towards the back end of the top 10, and we all of us mentioned it, all 3 of us, that now you're going to start seeing, every week there's going to be 1 or 2 games in the Pac-12 will have to be ranked teams. Like this week, with Oregon playing Oregon State on the road after the loss to Washington State. So And golly, I mean, it's just, and even the game of unranked Colorado at home against Caleb Williams and USC. I watched a lot of Arizona State, USC. I was not impressed with USC. I'm not saying they can't beat somebody badly, but it still seems to be a team that defensively is just okay, maybe. And the offense not protecting Caleb Williams as much as they were able to do. Of course, he's got the legs to move around and make the plays.
Yeah. I think I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see when they really all start playing each other and clashing. And there's going to be the Pac-12 has a chance to maybe be the conference that can sneak 2 teams into the playoff this year more than anyone else, maybe the Big Ten. But they also have a chance to be the best conference that is going, well, how are we not in this thing? What do we do? How did we wind up not in this thing with all of this? So, but that's just because, the concerts or the band's always better right before they break up.
Yeah, I mean, it's if they were not breaking up in the next few months, then I think everybody would still marvel at how competitive the league is, but there's certainly the backdrop of how is this league going away, and how could you have all these great teams, and this is the final year of it. So it has given that backdrop that otherwise wouldn't be there and put more of a microscope on the league because, yeah, it's all very entertaining and there's big stars and fun offenses and all that, but it's also the fact that this is the last time we're ever going to see this, so it adds a little bit of extra excitement where there's already a ton of it, and if you're a Pac-12 fan or a fan of one of those schools or just a college football fan like me, I think our best thing to do is just enjoy it as much as possible because we're truly never going to see this again. We're never going to see this lineup of conference teams for the foreseeable future, geographically positioned the way that they are and ranked the way that they are with the quarterbacks that they all seem to have. And beyond that, just, in some cases, the defenses or the offensive weapons or whatever. But it's a really good league with really good coaching, really good QBs, and a lot of fun and exciting elements. And it's going to be an amazing conference run here over the next few weeks. And then you add in, it's the last time, and it's got the makings for some must-watch TV.
When we come back, Brandon Marcello nationally on college football, Jon Wilner on the Pac-12, which we just discussed, and also J.J. Joe will join us. And this is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. As you get older, father time, all of that starts to take place, and 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have low testosterone that leads to symptoms of the sex drive not the same. ED, sleep habits, energy not the same. Could be one, could be all, and Dr. Petty wants to help you out along with his staff. This is how you get it done if, in fact, you fall under any of those categories. Petty Clinical OT online, PettyClinicalOT.com. Contact them, email, phone number. They will then set you up to have your blood work. They will take care of that for you. They get the blood results once you get there, and then look at your testosterone level along with everything else. But the testosterone level is what they're looking for, and if it's too low, he can put you in a program to increase it for you and, again, battle against father time. It's PettyClinicalOT.com, a chance to make you the man you want to be, need to be, and used to be.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Paul tracking down Brandon Marcello, who will join us here at 4:15. Jon Wilner, and again, J.J. Joe. Phil Bennett at the top of the hour at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to roll back around on Kim's text about Texas Tech. It's not as good, like as he thought maybe, or as certainly as many Texas Tech fans or just media in general thought as well. I was going to add on to that, like they do play Houston at home this week, so you would think that that's a winnable game even with the quarterback situation, sure, because Houston's just kind of right now. But after that, at 1-3, like they should be 2-3. But do you know what their schedule is like after that?
They play at Baylor.
So okay, like who knows there? But I mean, I think that's like 2 teams that are probably on some equal footing in some ways. But then they got K-State, they're going to Provo, they got TCU, they go to Lawrence, they got UCF, and then they go at Texas in Austin to close it out. So yeah, these next couple weeks for Tech, they need to try to get back to 500 because those last 6 weeks, you're going to Provo, you're going to Lawrence, you're going to Austin, and then your home games are K-State, TCU, and UCF. So that's a dangerous second half of the season if you're not careful, if you're Joey McGuire and company. So definitely need to grab a couple of these not gimmies, but more winnable games that you have these next couple of weeks.
All right, here's a couple of tweets as we wait on Brandon Marcello. This one from Joseph Duarte of the Houston Chronicle on Dana Holgorsen, and Mike Leach, of course, is going to be memorialized coming up this weekend at the game against Texas, inducted into the Hall of Fame at Texas Tech. We know about how it ended. We know how that was just a bad deal all the way around. But Holgorsen saying he kind of gives credit to Joey McGuire and the administration for making this happen. And Holgorsen, we discussed that with him when we were at Big 12 Media Days. I think he's excited about the fact he's going to be there, too, because of the connections he has to Mike Leach. So there's that with Texas Tech and Houston. It's going to be kind of surreal. Very emotional, but surreal. Like the first response from that tweet was, okay, are they going to pay his family the money? Because that's going to be brought into it. I think this is more about that. That is something on the side. I get it. But it is neat that Mike Leach will be honored finally at Texas Tech. Hate the fact that it came after the fact he passed away last fall.
Yeah, I mean, Dana seemed, I guess part of him seemed excited by the idea. I know he partially was joking as well, but he definitely didn't like the fact, I think, too, that he was going to be there because he's going to be emotional and he wants to just go play a football game. And instead, this man that he knew and cared for and coached with and all these things, that's going to be a part of the backdrop. And so I think he's looking to avoid the emotional stuff, and yet that's going to be right there in front of his face in Lubbock. And so he kind of was snickering at the idea of, like, of course they scheduled it for when I'm going to be up there. But, yeah, I think in the end he'll probably enjoy being a part of that experience as distracting or as emotional as it might be. And, that's fitting that, a former Leach guy is going to be there as the opponent on the night that they're honoring him or inducting him. So I think it's long overdue and a good move.
Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, joins us, national writer and columnist, covers college football with us on 365 Sports. Brandon, thank you for your time. What are your thoughts right now? The Colorado bubble burst in the game against Oregon, and that was emphatic. Who else, and there's still a story, but is there another story in college football that you think that has been overlooked so far the first month of the season?
I don't know if Penn State's been overlooked, but I think Penn State looks actually like a national title contender for the first time under James Franklin. They've been on the precipice, it seems like, but to me, in every single game, they just have what it takes in the trenches, defensively, and they've got that quarterback finally they've been needing for the last 6 to 7 years to get over that hump. And listen, those top three teams in the Big Ten, they're everything right now, and they're all legitimate playoff contenders, and we haven't been able to say that in the Big Ten ever. It's always been Michigan and Ohio State in the playoff era, and I think Penn State's legitimate this year.
What did you take away from Ohio State's win that was very gritty against Notre Dame? I mean, they've done that in the past, but maybe not necessarily under Ryan Day in that fashion.
Yeah, everybody's talking about the physicalness and the toughness or whatever. And, listen, maybe Notre Dame should have brought Lou Holtz out, the 11th player on the field for that last play. Maybe they could have stopped Ohio State. But, listen, I don't know about this storyline of Ohio State not being tough enough. I mean, last year they looked the part. I mean, they took Georgia down to the wire. Maybe should have beaten them, even without Marvin Harrison. So I think, listen, Ohio State is legit, and I think the kind of storyline, they're not physical enough. But we pick and choose kind of what the situation is there. Listen, Ohio State, they've lost to Michigan and practically no one else. I think still there's some hangover there from Oregon going into their house, a couple of years ago and beating them and being more physical. But I don't think Ohio State's got an issue with their identity up front.
Brandon, has Alabama figured it out after the win over Ole Miss, or is this just going to be kind of a week-by-week thing, you think, offensively, where they just find a way to put it together and lean a lot on that defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, it's going to be week-to-week still. Listen, Jalen Milroe was still missing some throws in that game. That offense is still going to be herky-jerky week-to-week. But I will say they seem to have figured some things out about how to utilize the tight ends. And listen, Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator from Notre Dame, that was his bread and butter at Notre Dame. It seems like he's figuring that out with the personnel there at Alabama. But, listen, they've got another loss or two probably on that schedule, potentially. But, the SEC West is wide open, in my opinion. But Alabama's just not in that upper echelon of maybe being a top 4 or really even a top 6 team. And the reason for that is because that offense is going to be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde all season.
Do you believe in USC that they're better? They were good last year. Then obviously were beaten by Tulane in the bowl game. But do you see them as any better than they were a year ago? I watched Arizona State, and I still see some things that seem to be chinks in the armor.
There certainly are. And I wonder about their concentration. It's like they just thought they can go on the road against a Power 5 team and beat them. And you can't do that in college football. I don't care how talented you are. There might be 2 teams better than USC in their own conference in Pac-12, and that being Washington and Oregon. I think Washington, I've been high on them all year. I think number 3 in my poll a week ago. I still have them there right now. Washington's the best team in the Pac-12 by far right now. They've got the best quarterback, too, in Michael Penix. That guy is extremely deadly accurate. Some of the throws he makes are otherworldly, guys. Caleb Williams is extremely talented, but I do wonder about just the concentration of everything. And listen, that's kind of been the DNA of Lincoln Riley's teams. Like every year, there's like 2 games on the schedule that just seems like they come out flat. And sometimes in the big games, including the Red River rivalry, as you guys have seen in the past. So I've got a lot of questions about that team. I think they're extremely talented, but I do wonder if they're going to be able to keep up that level of focus week to week.
Brandon, who has been the most disappointing to you so far?
Bama. I think it's Bama. That offense I thought would be much better than what it is. I thought it was going to take half a step back from last season, but it's just been very disappointing. And then right behind them, to be quite honest, is Texas A&M. And both of those teams still, I think, will contend for the SEC West Championship, but you can't lose the way you did against Miami and expect people to sit there and go, oh, well, they still have a lot of games to play. They could potentially be a SEC champion. It doesn't look like it, even if they are a contention. It's just there's a lot of teams in the SEC West that can contend for an SEC West championship, but are they really top 10 teams? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we might still be overrating Alabama, to be quite honest. Even with them just being in the top 15, we might still be overrating them.
And there's a note, by the way, A&M loses their quarterback for at least 2 to 4 weeks. That's an update on the injury from the game against Auburn on Saturday.
And I like Max Johnson, guys. I really like him. I thought they looked better, obviously, in the second half against Auburn with him out there. You know, listen, Connor may have lost his job by getting injured. It's going to be interesting to follow him the next month.
So, Brandon, I saw you put out your own rankings each week, your own top 30, and you had the Noles. Talking about the Noles on top, they obviously have had a couple of games that weren't the sexiest outcomes, but they got the job done, and they got the big monkey off their back with the Clemson win this past weekend. As you pointed out, like those are just some of the types of games you're going to have to win along the way, right, to become a playoff team, become a championship team. What are your thoughts about where FSU sits as this first month winds down?
Yeah, you guys know this. Every team, every year that ends up being a national champion, practically, they have a game where a lot of things have to come together, and they just have to escape by the skin of their teeth. For Georgia last year, it was in the playoff against Ohio State. Florida State had a pretty difficult schedule here in these first 4 weeks. And say what you will, there is something to be said mentally about having that losing streak against Clemson and having to go on the road and do it. Yes, the field goal kicker who was retired came back and missed the field goal for Clemson, and Florida State had to rally to win. But not just that, but Clemson had lost only one game at home under Dabo where they led by double digits at one point. And that happened last year against South Carolina, and then it happened again against Florida State. Florida State had to come back from double digits, and they had to find ways to score, one defensively on a scoop and score, for example. Florida State just got it, guys. They've got the talent. They've got the moxie. They know when it sees opportunity. People seem to think that's luck, but when there's an opportunity, you take advantage of it. Too many teams don't. They end up punting the ball after getting a turnover or getting good field position. Florida State didn't have to do that in the second half, and they really controlled that game after halftime, and that's what championship teams do. Florida State's in the driver's seat in the ACC, and as a result, they are a top 4 team. And to me, because of resume, the way they have won, the pieces they all have, to me right now, they deserve to be number 1.
Brandon, I am a Florida State alum, and those are as close to sweet nothings as you can ever say to me. But on the other side of that with Clemson, I'm kind of curious as to why Dabo Swinney has veered off into his I'm going to do it this way and no other way era when he used to be loose and fun and innovative.
Yeah, great question. And I thought he was kind of opening himself back up a little bit when he fired Brandon Streeter, one of his guys, as the OC, and brought in Garrett Riley. And also maybe looking at the transfer portal a little bit harder and actually getting guys that he needs. But he hasn't quite done that, and the offense not necessarily has improved all that much. I mean, Kay Klubnik's the top-tier elite quarterback. I think this offseason, guys, is going to be critical in how we view the Dabo Swinney era at Clemson. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach, no doubt, but you don't want to peter out in the last 3 to 5 years of your tenure there. You want to keep this thing going, get back to the playoff at some point these next 5 years. And I think to do that, he's got to open himself up and utilize that transfer portal. I know everybody's saying that, and it's the easy thing to do, just to say, yeah, just go to the portal and fill your holes on that offense or defense. But listen, it's true. They haven't done it. I mean, they have amounted to getting 2 transfers in the transfer portal era, and they amount to what are pretty much just walk-on quarterbacks. A former Clemson quarterback who transferred to Northwestern that they brought back on the team. I mean, these are guys that are not providing any help on your offense where you need better receivers. You need some better depth in the offensive front. And Dabo better kind of wake up and see that transfer portal is not going anywhere. NIL is not going anywhere. And yes, you can do things the way you want to, but to a certain extent, you got to open yourself up and adapt with the times.
Brandon, looking at the Big 12 real quick, Texas obviously seems to be the class of the league, and Oklahoma, you can make an argument for them right now as well. Great news is we'll get to see those two play here in a couple of weeks. Outside of that, I guess the Kansas schools are sort of in the mix, but what have been your thoughts on what has been a disappointing Big 12 as far as just the quality depth goes? And do you see this as being a 2-3 horse race, if that? What are your thoughts as these first 4 games have unfolded?
Yeah, here's just my stream of consciousness on all this. What the hell happened to Texas Tech?
Yeah.
They had the most disappointing team in the Big 12 to me. I thought they were legit potential contender in the conference, and they just looked nothing like it. What's happened to Baylor's defense? I think that they're going to get better in the next couple of weeks, especially when Blake gets back at quarterback. But, yeah, it's Texas and OU, and I think everybody else beyond that. And there's certainly tiers to all of that. Also this, and listen, I know not a lot of people are talking about them, but Houston not being all that good this year, and they haven't really left there. I saw a tweet today from Joseph Duarte that they've only traveled a total of 10 miles to play in the first 4 weeks of the season. What are they going to look like when they get on the road in a true road game in the Big 12 this year? I've got some concerns there. So, but yeah, listen, I know Texas is under a microscope. They're going to be criticized or praised for every little thing they do right or wrong. But Texas is about as complete of a team in the conference this year. I think OU's just behind them. And, hey, how about that OU defense showing up here this first month of the season? Very impressed with that. And that perhaps that's maybe the one thing we're not talking about enough about the top-tier Big 12 teams, that OU's defense has been night and day since last season.
By the way, Houston has not left, so they've traveled 0 miles, 10 miles to Rice. Baylor has not left Waco, and they're about to go to Orlando to play UCF, and Houston's headed to Lubbock, so they're both going to cross each other as they head completely in opposite directions. Brandon, we appreciate it as always. Always busy. Great stuff. We appreciate your time being a part of 365 Sports when you can.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, with us on 365 Sports, and then we'll have Jon Wilner here joining us here in this same segment, too. The Connor Wegman news came out. Yeah, he's out for 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. So that's official from Texas A&M. And then also, there it is. Thank you, Garrett. Also, this is not a college football note, but a note about Jerome Tang, former Baylor, longtime Scott Drew assistant, like his right arm. He's got remember we discussed this with Gene Taylor. Contract extension now signs him through 2029 and 2030. So congratulations to a great man in Jerome Tang.
Yeah, we're all big Jerome Tang fans around here, and we'll always wish him well, and it was great to see him have such massive success in the first year as a head coach there in Manhattan, and deserved. I mean, I think that they've got their guy, and I think he's in a great place with the great opportunity, and I think everybody there knows it, and so they're making it even more official. And, yeah, I think that's awesome news for K-State, and it's awesome news for Jerome Tang.
Yeah, it caused an interesting fight between me and my wife when she said, "You're not meeting me here on my disappointment that they've beaten Kansas." I said, "Well, I have known him way longer than you." Was not what I should have said.
That one's tucked away in a folder somewhere.
Yeah.
We are joined by Jon Wilner, the Pac-12 hotline, and also the San Jose Mercury News, and covers the Pac-12. Thank you for your time, John. Well, it's setting up to just be a battering ram of games week after week, and of course, now ranked 7, 8, 9, and 10, and I'm not so sure Washington shouldn't be ranked at number 1 right now. So is everything kind of gone according to plan, other than Colorado being, despite the loss to Oregon, better than anyone thought?
I think Colorado better than anyone thought, and Washington State better than anyone thought. Washington State's got 2 wins over ranked teams. They beat Wisconsin and Oregon State. The other teams, it was all kind of expected with the quarterbacks returning, the coaching staffs, this has been the most anticipated Pac-12 season in a long time on the field. And it has kind of, met the expectations so far. 29-5 non-conference record. Really couldn't have. If you're the Pac-12, you couldn't have asked for anything more. It's like been a dream September after what was obviously a nightmare August.
John, the quarterbacks in this league, the way that it shifted. Now, obviously, this is all changing, but was this what do you think started the shift to the kind of recruiting and attack of the transfer portal in the Pac-12 over the last couple of years?
I think it all starts with the coaches you hire. And, USC in December of 2021, I think it was either a 10-day or 2-week span, USC hired Lincoln Riley, Washington hired Kalen DeBoer, and Oregon hired Dan Lanning. And, of those three, 2 of them were big time. Well, Riley obviously shocked the country. Lanning was a huge name with Georgia's success. The DeBoer hire was kind of under the radar. He had been at Fresno State for 2 years, but obviously the guy's a fantastic coach. So I think a lot of what we're seeing now is based in those two weeks when those 3 coaches were hired. And because Washington had been down, and that's obviously a storied program out here and a big brand. And now the Huskies are back. USC is back. And Oregon is rolling. Then you add in, Utah's just consistency during the Kyle Whittingham era. And all of a sudden, your top programs have got great coaches, and results are that the players want to go play for the coaches. That's where it all starts, right? The investment in the coaching, making the right decision with your coaching, that is where it all starts.
A lot of those guys that you just mentioned getting a lot of attention, especially, Caleb Williams, for example, Michael Penix, but Cam Ward up there in Pullman, a Texas guy from Columbia High School. Just what are your thoughts on how dynamic he has been for the Cougars these past couple of seasons? Obviously, a huge win over Oregon State the other night. He put up monster numbers, but just what have been your impressions of the Texas gunslinger there in Cam Ward?
Yeah, and he was an Incarnate Word, and he transferred to Washington State when the Cougars hired, his coach at Incarnate Word. So as their offensive coordinator, and that got him to Pullman, and he came in with a ton of hype. Everybody's saying, he's way better than an FCS quarterback. He's got Power 5 talent. And last year, it just seemed like it was a little bit of a tough transition for him. But now he is playing to that talent. The guy's been dynamite. He is as good as anybody in the conference. The crazy thing is that between Cam Ward, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, and Shadur Sanders, one of those guys is the 5th best quarterback in this league. Yeah. And they would probably be the best quarterback in most other leagues. It's nuts.
There were a lot of people that expected eventually what Oregon might do to Colorado, but it has been an incredible story. And there was always the wonder about the value of Colorado because of all that was said during the summer. It's not so much have they surprised you, have they blown you away about how well they started the year?
I'm not sure I'd say blown away. Probably a little better than I expected. Beating Colorado State at home, that should be standard for Colorado, really. And Nebraska is not very good, right? Nebraska lost to Minnesota. They're not very good. I was impressed by the TCU win. I just think that Deion had them playing at a very high level for the first game, given all of the roster turnover. I've been impressed. I still think kind of that they're not quite ready to be an elite team, especially in a conference like the Pac-12 this year, because they aren't good enough. I just don't think they're good enough at the line of scrimmage, and that was exposed by Oregon. But, give Deion 2 more recruiting cycles, and they'll be really good up front. And who knows how long he's going to stay, but they're certainly on a great trajectory, and they have captured the public's imagination, I think, in a great way. I think the sport just benefits from a story like this. It's different. It's like if Magic Johnson coached Fullerton State for 2 years and then became a Power 5 basketball coach. You know, you got an American sports icon, and I think it's terrific for college football.
John, this could be a strange year. We were just talking about it with the Pac-12, in that they are the conference right now that I would say, if it comes down to it and you have to make an argument over which Power 5 conference should have 2 teams in a 14 playoff, it's probably the Pac-12, but they're so good, they might also wind up on the outside looking into this thing going, how did we get here now?
Yeah, that would be, I know. It's crazy. I cannot believe that the Pac-12 would be the first conference to get a 2-loss team in the playoff. I just don't think that's going to happen. So it's going to be really hard for somebody to get through this conference with only 1 loss, given the schedule, because USC, Utah, Washington, Oregon, they're all playing each other this year. Last year, USC didn't play Washington and Oregon. So it's set up for, an incredible October and November. And can anybody get through 12-1? Maybe. Could they get a second team in? I have a hard time believing that, just because, the SEC and the Big Ten will, just the brand names of those leagues. I have a hard time believing the Pac-12 will get 2 in. But it's certainly a fantastic league, and it's going to be great football down the stretch. And it's the offenses are good, and that's what people want to see.
John, how much better is USC overall, you think? Particularly their big question mark on defense. It seemed like they came out guns blazing, albeit against a weak schedule this past weekend, a little bit more of a struggle than maybe anticipated, and that schedule starts to ramp up. How much better are the Trojans in your mind from what you've seen?
I don't know that they're better than they were last year. I think that's still to be determined. They did not look good against Arizona State, and Arizona State's the best team they've played. They played Nevada, San Jose State, Stanford, and ASU. Those teams are 3-14. So, we'll see. The Colorado game Saturday is going to be a great test for both teams, right? Is Colorado more like the team we saw against TCU or more like the team we saw against Oregon? And is SC good enough to go into Boulder and win a 9 a.m. game for USC, which credit to them for being willing to play at 9 a.m. But I think it's going to be a telling game for both. I am not sure about SC. I have Washington State, my Pac-12 power rankings. I've got Washington State ahead of USC this week.
In fact, you brought that up. That was such an entertaining game with Cam Ward, what he's done, getting the kind of attention, and what a huge win of the. And a lot of people are like, these are the teams nobody wants. Right now, it doesn't matter. It's about right now.
Right. It is right now. It's a little bit inseparable, but certainly what they're doing on the field right now, both of them, it's a great story. The Cougars, they beat Wisconsin, 2 ranked teams at home, and they basically led both games throughout and were ahead by double digits most of the time. So they could very well be the sleeper team in the Pac-12 this year. They're very good on defense. Cam Ward can sling the ball around. And the funny thing is they've got a 28-year-old offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, and so did Oregon's offensive coordinator, Will Stein, who was at UTSA. He's young. ASU's head coach, Kenny Dillingham's like 32. There's a lot of young, Dan Lanning's very young, a lot of young coaches out here that, use a very entertaining style of football. It's a little bit of the air raid kind of thing, and they relate very well to their players and to their quarterbacks.
John, what do you think about the potential for a relegation model merger with the Mountain West for Oregon State and Wazoo?
Well, I've always thought that college football is going to end up with that model. I just thought it would probably be in the 2030s. And everything that's happened in the Pac-12 in the last 6 weeks has seems like it has sped up the transformation of the sport, right? How long are Florida State, Georgia, and Clemson going to be in the ACC? That kind of thing. How long is Ohio State going to be willing to take the same amount of Big Ten revenue as Rutgers? How long is Alabama going to be willing to share equally with South Carolina, right? We're moving at warp speed towards the transformation of the sport. And relegation and promotion is going to be part of it, I think. I just don't know that contractually they can make it work. because it would require all 12 schools in the Mountain West agreeing to a model that doesn't suit a bunch of the schools in the Mountain West. Like, why would San Jose State or Hawaii or Utah State vote for it? And if they don't have enough votes, they can't implement it. So that's where I'm kind of stumbling over how they can actually execute the model and put it into, implement it.
Yeah, that's always been my question as well, is why would you go along with that? Like, I just don't know why you would go along with being demoted possibly, unless you just had to. But, John,
Yeah, that's the thing. The demotion isn't going to work. And
Right.
that's the same thing in the Big Ten, right? I mean, Purdue is not going to agree to, take less money than Ohio State willingly. It's going to have to be the big schools being proactive and leaving and forming their own division, so to speak. I don't think they can do it any other way, and it's going to be complicated, and it's going to take some time.
In any given year, when one of those might have made a bad coaching hire, are they going to be like Michigan has to go down for a couple years? Are they going to be, good with that? I don't think so. That's going to be problematic as well. But John, where are we as far as the latest on Oregon State and Washington State? I mean, Paul mentioned one of the options that has been floated out there, but just bare bones, where is that whole situation at the moment with the Pac-12 rights and Kliavkoff and just what all they're looking at possibility-wise moving into the future?
It's on hold as things play out in court, right? Okay. Washington State and Oregon State have sued the Pac-12 to get the court to decide which schools are on the Pac-12's board of directors. And those schools would have control of the money. And Washington State and Oregon State believe they are the only two rightful board members. I don't know how long that's going to take. I think it could be several more weeks or even a month or two before we know for sure. Once they determine, the courts determine the makeup of the Pac-12 board, then it'll probably move swiftly because they'll figure out, all right, here's how much money we have access to, and here's the assets and liabilities, and here are the options. And the options are really for Oregon State to join the Mountain West in a traditional move, like Utah's joining the Big 12, or have Mountain West schools come into the Pac-12 and preserve the Pac-12's name and brand, because there's it's been battered, like it's like got into the ring with Mike Tyson, right? But there's still more value in the Pac-12 brand than the Mountain West brand. If you're under the Pac-12 banner, you have all the history. You've got Jackie Robinson and Arthur Ashe and Tiger Woods and Barry Bonds. You own all that history, and there's value to that. And I think Oregon State and Washington State would prefer to be able to preserve the Pac-12 name.
John, thank you very much for your time as always. It's amazing. The deepest they've been in a long, long time is a year that's kind of like the swan song. And it is crazy and kind of hard to fathom, but we're here, and that's what it's going to be like. Jon Wilner, the Pac-12 hotline, and also San Jose Mercury News.
Yeah, good stuff there. We hadn't talked to him in a while. What all's happened was the death of the Pac-12. You had the ACC moves, and now, getting an update on sort of where Oregon State and Washington State are. I know there's, some hope about if the Big 12 or the ACC or, I think if you're in Oregon State and Washington State, you're just hoping for any option, to come available. And it just sucks, but, good to just kind of catch up on where that is, and the courts will determine a lot, I guess, here in the few weeks about what direction that ultimately goes. But yeah, I hate that they're just hanging in limbo, but in the meantime they're playing big time football games, and in some cases winning some of those games, and they've got exciting players, and there is that to distract you for the time being. But that is also the reality waiting on the other side of this season is what games are you playing and where and against who and all that next year.
Worry about now.
Yeah, but for right now, if you're a Pac-12 fan or alum, or you're just somebody like me who has no attachments other than just being a college football fan, enjoying the heck out of this next few weeks, and possibly going into next year, because they very well could have a playoff team, if not a couple playoff teams, if the cards fall the right way.
They could have a playoff team and a Heisman Trophy, or maybe 2 or 3 represented in New York. Depending on how many they take, 3 or 4 in New York City.
Right now, who would it be? I mean, they'd have to have Penix up there. For sure, I'd have him up there, but I'm just thinking across the country. it's kind of early for Heisman talk, and I really haven't felt like I've heard a lot of it.
Bo Nix would definitely be
Bo
in there.
Nix, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think the defending champion?
I was thinking Caleb Williams is probably going to be there too.
yeah.
So
Now,
there's 3 guys right there.
I have a vote, and I'm glad I don't have to do it now. I'm glad, and you'll see more things happen along the way, which might knock people out or validate that they should actually be a part of the conversation.
But it's different this year. Like Ohio State doesn't have some star quarterback.
Yep.
Alabama doesn't have some star, offensive player just in general, much less at quarterback. Georgia doesn't have anybody that just jumps off the page at you as far as, being at the Heisman ceremony.
No, their best offensive player is a tight end who everybody loves.
Which he could, in theory.
He could, in theory,
Ohio
get there,
State's is a wide receiver who has not really been, tremendous, at least so far.
But those guys have to, more than a quarterback, really show out to get there. So, that's still a work in progress. So, right now, the Heisman ceremony, if you're going 3 to 5 guys, at least 3 of them are Pac-12 quarterbacks.
At least for now.
Yeah.
On this as we close out the month of September. This weekend, we have a couple of more super chats. We will get to you. And then also a note or two as well involving college football moving forward. Yes, we will bring up the Cowboys' disaster in Arizona and baseball's final week of the regular season because we should touch on that too. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. They're the people that I've counted on. Various different occasions when my car got banged up in a wreck. Took my car over there, talked to Donnie, got all set up, and they set up an appointment and squared me away. Took my car for a couple days, but it was not as much of a pain as I thought it was going to be because they got it done in pretty quick fashion. And right now, they want to be the people that you can count on. I've counted on them. Thousands of others have counted on them over the years, but you can count on them as well. No matter if you're getting body work done like I was, you're dealing with their award-winning service department, or if you're just looking to get into a brand new or pre-owned vehicle. Right now, there's a lot of construction out in front of the dealership, so they've got great pricing because they want to encourage you to still make your way on over there, or you can check out the deals over on the website or give them a phone call and talk to them about some of what they've got going on. But if you are going to make the trek over to the dealership, they're going to make it worth your while getting through all that construction. So right now you can save $7,000 on 2023 GMC Sierra 1500s, and qualified buyers can finance for 0.9%. They've got dozens of Sierras on the lot. They've got inventory, pricing, financing, all set up to get you into a new GMC Sierra today. Plus, if you're military or first responder, you can save an additional $500. So there's one of the new offerings for you. As I mentioned, though, they've also got the pre-owns, and they trade for the best. So they have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock, and their financing goal at Richard Carr is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So check out their pre-owned offerings today. Again, a bunch of cars and trucks in stock for you to get great pricing and financing today. And maybe you're not looking to buy cars. I mentioned at the very top, I've been over there to get my car worked on, and maybe that's what you need as well. It's an oil change or perhaps tires. Well, if it's tires, their service department cannot be beat. They're offering a price match guarantee on the lowest priced comparable tires in town. So service your car and truck in town with the people that you can count on at Richard Carr. In business for 24 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people to go to with your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This segment with former Baylor quarterback and Baylor radio analyst J.J. Joe is sponsored by Alliance Bank Central Texas, where customers have confidence that their financial needs are in good hands with 2 locations in Waco.
Baylor coming off getting routed by Texas on Saturday, play in Orlando on Saturday of this week. J.J. Joe joins us. And J.J., there's a lot of ways you could describe it, but the bottom line is UT was men among boys. And I'm talking from the defensive line dominating to everything in between. Craig put this up over the weekend on Saturday. Is this the most disparaging level of talent between Texas and Baylor we've seen in many years? JJ, you there?
You guys got me?
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
now we do. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. I'm not sure, but it's been a while since I think the gap seemed to be pretty big. I remember when we went down there and they were really good with Vince Young and those guys. So I don't think they definitely in the last couple of years sprinted past us, and that's the disappointing things. I think for a few years there, I felt going into the game that we had a really good chance to win, compete at a high level. And this season, I was not jaded. I knew it would be a tough contest. We'd have to play a really, really good game. And it just proved that they're better. And we just have to deal with that and move on.
JJ, what positives do you pull from the other night that they can build on? I know it's tough at 38-6, but did you see some things out there that now that Texas in this first month of the season or the first 4 games are out of the way, what can they build on out of all this?
That's a really tough one because I think offensively, we just could not compete. I think we had a couple, it's good to see Monterey get a little action, get our speed going. Our run game was really not there. Offensive line, like you said, it was kind of felt like men against boys, and when they turned it up, we really couldn't do much, and that's why I made the comment before. Last week, I think that you guys see the Alabama game. So right now, I think for me, the only positive I think you get out of it is just maybe. This opened some eyes, I think, in the staff that, this game is about, this is big boy ball. It's about winning. I mean, at the end of the day, all the other stuff that goes along with it, yeah, we want to have really good young men with really good student athletes. So that's what I was.
But at the end of the day, you got to just go get, when you win a Big 12 championship, you have to leverage it. You got to take advantage of every rule that's available to you to stay competing with guys like Texas. Texas took advantage of every rule available to them. Whether you want to say, hey, they have the best line money to buy, but they're going to compete for the national championship this year. And Baylor should be doing that, and we're not.
JJ, we've gotten to see more of Sawyer Robertson, albeit there is the caveat that he has not been 100% healthy. Can't run like he otherwise would be able to. But just as his profile has sort of filled out with more evidence and more looks at him, what have been sort of your takeaways? For me, particularly curious about the red zone interceptions. And is that something that just gets better with experience, or is that something that's just kind of, it's a problem, it's always going to potentially be a problem? Just how do you sort of view how he's been fleshed out here over the last month?
Yeah, I mean, I like what I've seen from Sawyer. I mean, it's just tough for a guy like that when you're young, you just got to have your legs. Because when you go 1-2, I mean, read 1, read 2, it's not there. You got to trust your legs to be able to run, and he's a decent athlete. So I hate that for him. He doesn't have any confidence in his feet because of his ankle. It's because of his ankle. And I think with an offense that's struggling, I mean, we have a hard time scoring. And when you have that and you're the quarterback, it's your job to try to put points on the board. And you start pressing a little bit. You start probably taking a chance or, trying to force something, or you just don't pay attention to everything. And I think that's what's happening with Sawyer. But I like what I see from him. I like his arm strength is not Blake's, but he has good enough arm strength. I like his athleticism. I like what I saw against Utah because, I think that's probably when he was the healthiest. So, he has a future here. But right now, Blake is more advanced than he is. Blake is not the same runner, but he's more advanced because he has that season under his belt. And that's being, seen now on the field.
And Aranda said that Blake's still not quite there, although they're going to start opening him up to do a bit more this week. But how much of a difference do you think he can make for an offense struggling the way that this one is?
Yeah, unless Blake's going to start blocking, man, I'm not sure. He'll help. Don't get me wrong. Blake will help. But we have to remember, Blake was in that first game, and he went most of the way, and we were losing to Texas State. So, he would definitely help in the passing game. I think there's a lot of opportunities there that Sawyer's just not used to seeing, and he's just not in that flow. So Blake will help, but really what has to help happen is that relatively young offensive line has to come together, and it just takes time in games, man. That's just the way it is, and whatever has to happen with maybe simplifying the scheme, maybe changing some things, maybe maybe it'll get there. But I will say this. I was encouraged early because I think Coach Grimes adjusted to get Sawyer some really easy completions early, because he was completing a pretty high percentage early, then it kind of waned. But I was glad to see that because I thought that helped his confidence some, and then it kind of waned later as UT ran away from him.
As a former player, as an alum, a letter winner, and also someone that does the analyst work for Baylor Radio, I want to go back to a couple of 2 or 3 answers from you. You could almost hear it in your voice as you've seen this roster built, or lack of it, that Baylor, are you suggesting in a way that they have not taken advantage of what's in front of them, especially after the Sugar Bowl win in their best year ever?
Smoak, I'm not there every day, but I would say that, and this is no disparage. I think we have good talent, and some of that talent is young. And that's just one of the gaps. So I think last year when we had the returning offensive linemen, I think we missed on the receivers. We just didn't do it. So that we lacked talent on the edge, experienced talent to take advantage of the 21 championship. And that, I think Coach admitted that. And then this year, your receivers developed, so that's what should have happened. We got the Barrington brothers, but I think when you have Blake at quarterback, you have to commit to a certain type of style of play. You got to say, Blake's going to be our quarterback this year and potentially next. I got to get him a couple of tackles, guys who can play, and I got to get him, make sure that he has some receivers that can go get it. Then I'm leveraging him at the highest and best use. So our talent via our competition, I believe, this is just me, is not where it was. Now, we had special guys. I think Jalen was special. We see Terrel now starting to doing the same thing he did in in college. He's special. JT Woods is playing. That guy was special, and several others. So I'm not going to fool myself, but I think sometimes we'll believe that the schemes and the things that we're doing, that Abram was special, Preston was special, was what was unique. When that wasn't what was unique. The uniqueness was the player. The player was unique, and you put him in a good scheme.
JJ, are you surprised that it turns around all so quickly now because of all the things you mentioned before about, the rules that are now available?
Yeah, it didn't surprise me. I mean, Deion can take a one-win team, and I'm not going to say they're going to win 9 games, but they won 3. He made them competitive because he was unapologetically kind of true to kind of how he knows this thing is. And whether we like it or not, college football is big business, and he knows, number one, you have to structure this thing to help get young men to a certain point where they're ready for life after football. But at the end of the day, you have to win football games. And he and some people didn't like that, but trust me, man, guys being asked to leave by coaches and been ushered out the door and said, hey, you don't have plans, that's been going on since I played. So for a kid to get get the knowledge from the coach that, hey, man, it's not a spot for you here, I just go look for something else, that's not new. The only difference is, now that it's a little bit more public with the transfer portal and all that. So I mean, I think in the future, I think we've learned a lot. But I'm hoping the rest of this year, this thing, and I think it can turn around, but it's going to take a lot.
JJ, we have a lot of just various Big 12 fans, college football fans in our audience, and now that you've had an opportunity to see Texas up close, obviously some of what they did was, a result of Baylor's own struggles, but that they're highly ranked there at number 3, and they're going to be favored probably in every game except for maybe Red River, and probably still will be favored there in a couple weeks. But what are your thoughts on what you saw from Texas and sort of where they are right now with Sark?
I like them. I think they're beatable. Because I think, I like yours, but, yours is not asked to do too much. I mean, he's asked to make the play. And he's learned, though. I think he's learned that, hey, I don't have to be, that 5-star guy that's got to save the program when I have all this talent around me. They have a good offensive line that's grown up. They have guys on the edge. Worthy changes the game for him because you just have to cover him a certain way and know where he is. And then they have a runner that they replaced with John Robinson and Roschon Johnson with. I mean, I really like that Jonathan. I think it's Jonathan Brooks is his name.
Yep.
But I really like him too. So, and defensively, to me, and I wrote this last week, defensively is what I'm really impressed with Texas. They get there. They remind me of how we played. I mean, when I remember seeing 19, Chris Miller was the first one I saw at 19 that he just popped off the shot. I was like, who is this dude? Those dudes come with speed and intention. And we used to do that. Right now, we don't. I just think there's the gap. And you'd have to be blind not to see it, that we used to have a group of guys that played so fast. I remember when Clayton Johnson went down in 19. We were like, oh, my God. And here comes Terrel, right? And that guy may have been better than Clayton. So I think that's what I've been impressed with UT is that they've recruited on the defensive side, and that's made a huge difference. And then they have the offensive line, so they're going to have a chance at it. There's no one in the Big 12 I think they can lose one. I don't think there's anybody who should beat them. So I mean they should beat. They'll go to the CFP if they do what they need to do.
JJ, as always, thank you very much for the insight. We appreciate it. JJ Joe, Baylor Radio color analyst, with us on 365 Sports. I glanced online. I think right now Texas about a 7.5 somewhere, at least for now, favorite against Oklahoma. I don't see that changing. In fact, it might go up a little bit. But right now, there's nobody on their schedule they won't be favored to
No. And,
Oklahoma's
looked good, but I think Texas has been a bit more well-rounded. But that's going to be a fascinating game if they both handle their business this weekend. That's going to make for one heck of a showdown between those two here in Dallas in a couple weeks.
You know what? And like you can take the element of that game that it is. It's never how you would predict it to be.
Right.
So it's a very unpredictable game because the atmosphere is so unique and everything that goes into it and the buildup and all of that. I think that when you look at it, if they're both hitting on all cylinders, that game is going to be as wacky as maybe any of those in the rivalry because you just don't know when it comes into it.
I know that there's the emotion of it.
Yeah.
Like Charlie Strong had a team that beat Oklahoma one time, and it made no sense because you never know when something may happen early. I just don't see how Oklahoma, no matter how much better their defense is, has the ability to score enough in that game. I know Gabriel's got a great percentage or efficiency, whatever. I don't know if they have. There's no CD Lamb. There's none of those guys that like make the big play. They got to win this weekend.
Right.
But at least from what I've seen, the difference is to me pretty obvious. But that's also again a rivalry where the winner is not always the team that's favored.
Well, if your defense doesn't give up huge explosive plays 5 times in a game, then you can keep it somewhat close and you can, work
Get
on
a break.
that.
Yep.
But, if you're giving up I think I saw that Texas's longest scoring drive was 3.5 minutes, and every single drive was less than 10 plays. So they are super explosive. If you can keep that explosiveness somewhat in check, I think that's how you beat them. Ultimately, but that's easier said than done. And speaking of odds, so yeah, we'll get to that in a couple weeks. They both got to win this weekend. Like KU could jump up and beat Texas for all we know, although that doesn't seem like that'll probably be the case. But that's why you suit up. And speaking of odds, UCF started off as I think it was like 9.5 favorites, and it's already up to 11 for Baylor rolling into town this weekend. So that just kind of goes to show you where things are continuing to trend. And yeah, I don't know. A lot of people have optimism about rolling into Orlando, but maybe going on the road will be a blessing, a breath of fresh air after having the first month at home. I know the fans could certainly use a little bit of a break to just sit back and collect themselves after what we've seen the last 4 weeks.
A couple of OU fans, Carmelo, and a couple of others saying that I have not watched Oklahoma. I'm just telling you, that's what I think. Don't get your feelings hurt because this is my opinion. They have scored. Gabriel's got a great efficiency and, again, percentage. That's great. That's my opinion. And if I'm wrong, you can be here on the chat the Monday after Red River and tell me that. I don't see it. That doesn't mean it can't happen. That's my opinion, just like you have yours. When we come back, Phil Bennett and his opinion on what he has seen throughout the last weekend in college football. And this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, amazing deals available for right now in the month of September as they wind down the month, including the 2023, the new 2023 Ram, the 1500 Lone Star 4x4, the Crew Cab, $11,000 off MSRP, or 2.9% financing for 72 months. Choose the new 2023 1500 Laramie 4x4 Crew Cab, $12,500 off MSRP, or 2.9% financing for 72 months. So the opportunities are there for you to get the Ram you want. And, of course, the options there if you want either money off MSRP or the options of financing. Also on top of that, it's Jeep Adventure Days, and here's one of the ones that's getting a lot of attention, the 2023 Jeep Gladiators, the trim level, Sport, Overland, Rubicon, or Mojave. Right now, $5,500 off. The 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee, limited with $5,500 again, or 10% off MSRP. Ram, Jeep, and more. Alan Samuels, General Manager, CEO. Ted Teague, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at Baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin. And you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingram at the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Phil Bennett. Okay, here we go with what football is all about over the weekend, and also some evidence. And one of them, Phil, we knew Texas was better. To me, it's all, whatever they have the weapons on offense, it's all about what they have, to me, with what I saw with their defense, from the defensive linemen being as fast as the running backs at Baylor to everything else in between. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. They won the battle up front. And, you know, after watching it and seeing it again, I remember early in the game, their big inside guy, I think is 99, got on Baylor's guard. And, I mean, the ball went outside, and you're right, he ran the back down before he could get back to the line of scrimmage. Now, with that said, I think there was some opportunity early in the game for Baylor. I think that any team that goes almost 10 yards a snap versus 4 yards a snap, it's pretty dominating. I just didn't, I think about the times I was at Baylor. I mean, we had playmakers on both sides of the ball. I just don't see that right now. I mean, and you can knock the coaching, you can knock play calling or scheme, but there were times that we were in position to make plays on both sides of the ball, and we couldn't make them.
Phil, what do you do now in this era when you see yourself in the conference, although Texas is leaving, but you see yourself with a building talent gap? How do you have to address that quickly? Obviously, you can't do it about it in season, but do you have to make a drastic change to what you do recruiting-wise, transfer portal-wise, and all that moving forward?
Well, I think, number one, you better worry about the season at the moment. And you better quit worrying about the naysayers, the Twitter, and you better get the bunker mentality. You better get in and say, hey, how can we fix this now that we can walk after 12 games? We can say, hey, we came back and we got this thing reconnected and we got it going. First of all, you got to evaluate on both sides of the ball. What do we need to be doing different? What can we do different? Let's not forget, we're not going to play the number 3 team every weekend. There's games to be won. And that's the thing Dave and his staff are looking at, and they're saying, you know what? We will work the portal. We will work the recruiting. obviously, Paul, they have a recruiting list. I'm not sure they have a portal list because you don't know yet. But you're looking at your needs. But at the moment, how can we get the guys that are on our roster, that are on our travel squad, playing to a higher level and win the games we're capable of winning? And you can't do that by wishy-washy. You've got to be, set. Hey, we can do this. This is what we can do. This is what we can't do. And let's get good at it. And I'm telling something. I don't know, David, you remember this. In 2012, we started off good. We had like 5 injuries in the secondary. Mike Hicks in particular got hurt. And we had like 4 terrible games. And I tell people, that was my favorite year because we ended up, we got some kids healthy. The kids that played when the other guys weren't healthy got better. And at the end of the year, we tore a very good UCLA team up. I think we won, David, you might correct me on this. I think we won 5 straight at the end of the year.
Yeah, it all kind of happened. That one loss, the fumble near midfield against Texas on the road, and then you just kind of started. You really did, and everything kind of started to work. And that team at the end of the year, to me, was as good as anybody that you had, even the ones that won a Big 12 title. Yeah. Florence at quarterback played lights out. But that's what I remember. I tell people, was your favorite year 13, the first Big 12 championship, or was it 14? 12 was the year I look back on, and Bryce Hager got honored by the B Club this weekend, and he and I talked, and I got a very nice note. I said, it's amazing that year you spoke to me. I said, after the way I wore your ass out, and I even told his parents, I said, hey, he's either got to decide whether he wants to play or not play. And lo and behold, he comes out of his shell and, he plays like an All-American. But, that's the year I looked at. These guys can do that. They are good coaches. And they just got to, don't worry about what's being said. Worry about what you're seeing and what you can do about it. I think good coaches are able to do that, and I believe they can. I do.
Phil, who did you wear out the most over their career? Bryce Hager, Sam Hall, Mike Hicks, or Ryan Stewart?
You better throw Eddie Lackey in there because he was, I don't know, Orion loved to get me hot. So, he's, and I'm going to tell you something. Cholo, which is Mike Hicks, could give you that look that, he wasn't saying, hey, coach, I love you. It was that look we all talk about. And he was so dang, such a good looking kid, but what a great player. I always tell people this, Paul. You can measure speed, you can measure height, you can measure side jumping, but when you have intelligence and you can play with intelligence, Mike Hicks was one of my all-time favorites because he mastered the position. I mean, you told him one time, and it was done. And I think I remember I told you, David, we missed him so much those 4 or 5 games. When he came back against, I believe it was K-State, or maybe the Oklahoma game before we almost beat him. And, I mean, we were a different team.
I think you kind of touched on this with the Bryce Hager thing, but, Coach, one of the deals with this Baylor team right now is that they're young, there's some inexperience there, and I know that one of the only ways to get that is to get experience. But if you're Dave Aranda, how do you approach some of these young guys and let them know, or the other coaches, of like, it's time to grow up and you have to grow up now and there's not much of a choice in the matter? I mean, how do you kind of try to get that going with those guys who may not be quite ready to step fully into the spotlight just yet?
Well, I think, talking, keeping them aware of the situation is fine. But there's got to be a sense of urgency. And I'm not saying you have to do I'm not saying I was the perfect, but I want to see some sense of urgency. And I think that just a little bit more emotion by everybody, to just get the general feeling. That's what I thought Todd was able to do. And I know Vic Beloya is as tough as anybody. Get them saying, hey, you know what? We're challenged. We're in a corner. let's get our ass ready to fight and come out of this thing. If you're in our way, you're fixing to get it, and get a mentality of almost, us against everybody else. And I think that comes from the coaching staff, and I think that, and I think they're all have done it before. And I think right now we need to see some guys step up, because leaders are derivatives of how they're led. So if I get a sense of urgency, by God, I'm going to tell you something. I promise you today, Bryce Hager will tell you, when I let him take the field, I made damn sure, I took great pride that he better be motivated, he better be knowledgeable, and he better be tough. And I think that's where this coaching staff can take charge of that. Whatever you're doing, turn it up. Turn it up. Because right now, we're not where we want to be. Turn it up. And like I said, I'm not a coach basher. I think every one of them can do that. And I know they're good coaches. And there's games, once again, there's games on that schedule to win. Let's go get them.
Phil, there were other games. Obviously, Ohio State beats Notre Dame at the buzzer, so to speak. Oregon just boat raced Colorado from the start. Florida State with a critical win coming back against Clemson. Did you get a chance to watch much of any of those, even if highlights, and your thoughts about them?
I really enjoyed the Ohio State Notre Dame game. It was a battle royal. It was heartbreaking. I don't know if you saw the end, but Notre Dame played with 10 people the last two plays. And they're killing the coach up there. And until you've ever lived it, you people say there's no way that could happen. Yes, it happened. When you get in the stadium with 90,000, they call a timeout. You bring guys over. You change personnel groupings. It was a mistake, and it was costly because on the end of the game with 3 seconds left, they ran a zone read right where the defensive end would have been, and they had a great call. They were bringing the safety off the edge. He thought he had inside help. They would have stopped it. So it was a great game. Both teams give and take. I thought Florida State, Norvell has really done a good job. They're playing with confidence. Their quarterback, to win at Death Valley and Clemson is awesome. And of course, I think Dan Lanning is showing people that he's got great confidence in his team. I think that unfortunately for Dion and them, he's done a great job. Their staff has done a great job. I think he probably knew they were probably outgunned in that game. And then sometimes when it starts off bad, they weren't able to recover. I think the games are really starting to get good, and I thought there was some real good games last week.
Phil, what do you think that that schools like Alabama and Clemson have to do to? I mean, Alabama looked like they bounced back pretty nicely, but they might have kind of similar problems depending on the opponent every single week. But to get back their juice on offense.
Well, I think it all starts with quarterback. If you look at Alabama, he played really well, but he didn't play it down against South Florida. And, and of course, my brother Jerry, Dave, his favorite saying, a coach's best friend is the bench. He set his butt on that bench, and he came out and played at a higher level, protected the ball better, and really did a nice job, especially the second half. I'm not sure Alabama this year is going to be a dominant team because I don't think, you remember the receivers they used to have, the Judys, the Waddles, and you can go on and on. The kid at Philadelphia, and the quarterbacks. I just don't think they're there yet, and I think that's also affecting their defense. So, I think Clemson is in a transition. He made a conscious decision not to use the portal, going to keep building on high school. And don't get me wrong, people say, oh, they're down. That was a hell of a game against a very good team. I don't believe they're down, but I think that they've probably, got to reevaluate a little bit. They're thinking on this portal because they're only a player or two away from being dominant.
Phil, the Texas Tech and Joey McGuire, their quarterback is now out, Shuck, and they've got a good young quarterback in Baron Morton, but the expectations and a lot of the hype, we always hear about Texas and but there's been a lot of buildup about Texas Tech, and a lot of it was something they were saying too. They're now 1-3. Their quarterback is gone, although Morton is good. Your thoughts about being in that position, and how does Joey rally the troops?
Well, I had a conversation today with a very prominent head coach, and one of the things brought up is Joey is a motivator. He is a feel-good coach, and he's got his work cut out because, that it's easy when you're standing in front of them and you just beat Texas and you say, hey, the Big 12 goes through Lubbock. But, I know the expectations. And being at 1-3, he's got a challenge. That was a game at the end of the game. They just weren't able to manage to win it. And I think the quarterback is a good player. And I think sort of what I said about Baylor, you're looking at the same thing. You know what? Nothing's going to change. You're 1-3. You played 4 games and you've had 1 successful game, and you find a way to win. He's got the same challenge to get his guys to play at a higher level, evaluate what they do good, what they do. It really doesn't change. Like anybody that has a business, you're constantly looking at what makes you better. Now, when you're touting yourself, and I say this all the time, less is more as a coach. You respect all and fear none. And I think everybody's using the term, you've made it personal. You know what? In college football today, any high school, if it's not personal to begin with, you're not the coach or player I want on my team. When I talk about personal, I'm talking about pride. As hard as you work, the hours that you spend preparing, that is a personal pride. So every game should be personal. And with that said, I think that your action should speak for your volumes for your words. And now today, I know we're an instant gratification society, and everything we say is getting transpired within minutes. But I really believe that you look at guys. That's what I love about Nick Saban. He's careful with his words. He's quick to compliment and slow to downgrade. And I think that goes a long way.
Phil, you have coaches are hired to be fired, and you've been fired, and you've been at a lot of places where you've had incredible success and some that did not. And so my question is, when you are the guy, whether you're the head coach or a coordinator, and things aren't going well, how much, and everybody may handle this differently, how much did that eat at you? How much of that did you not eat? You did not sleep, or did it ever get to that point?
Well, let me tell you something. If you're worth your salt, I say this again, your work is your product. It's your picture. Mm-hmm. You're painting a picture. It's your product. And you've got to own it. Now, the one thing you do, the mind, we're all quick to rationalize. Well, it's not my fault. This kid, one of the things I always thought, and I go back to 12, and a couple of my staff guys, I was getting hammered. Our defense, we weren't very good. And I told them, stay the course. I did. And I made it a point. I didn't blame people. I said, listen, we're in this together. This is what we got to do to work out of it. I talked every day about, sticking together, taking that next step, challenge, doing what we could do. And I said, be the best coach you can be. If you spend time and you tell people, well, I can't sleep, or, to me, that's weak. I don't want to do that. Now, I know, I knew the sense of urgency. I'll never forget one of my most anxious moments was our last game in 12 was against Oklahoma State. They were talented. And Todd Monken was the offense coordinator. Do you remember that? And they had a receiver. I don't remember his name. And actually, he was hell to stop. But I said, we've got to find a way to beat them. And we did. We went out. I was nervous. And I remember one of my coaches, he goes, I've never seen you this nervous. Because it was a game to get us into the Holiday Bowl. But at the same time, I didn't want my guys thinking, oh, hell, I'm worried about fire. You know, I tell my son-in-law, I tell any coach I work with, you know, don't be afraid of the situation. If this thing scares you, you don't need to be in this business. You know, I have a feeling of this. I mean, you can get everybody on the radio, television that has never done it tell you what to do. But I worry about the people I would ask advice to. If they're telling me that we're screwing it up, then that's when I worry. And I think you've got to departmentalize situations, and this is one of them.
Thank you as always. It's great to have you on the show. The chat room loves hearing you. The true serum, the insight, the experience, and knowledge. Thank you so much, Coach.
Hey, guys, let's go get them.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, head coach at SMU. Didn't go well, but then he became the defensive coordinator. I think I saw where Chris Bartles mentioned that he got a raise even though his team was allowing 30 points per game. Back then, when the offense was so explosive, all Baylor needed was a stop a half, and they were going to double their wins. A stop a half. That's how much their defense at the time was so bad. It was just bad. And got to stop a half. Red zone defense, give up field goals, not touchdowns, and it started to work out to where they won a couple of Big 12 titles. When we come back, a couple more nuggets in college football, and also Paul Catalina's top 5, and this is 365 Sports. One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financials, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
3 super chats, and we've had more than those. We read the ones earlier today, and thanks to all of them whenever they come through the pipeline. We do appreciate you. Texas Buckeyes sent one, just $5, and we appreciate that.
It had a cool emoji.
Yeah, it did.
Dancing.
It did. And then smash the like button, gang, and thank you for those who do. And then also from Barry Crawford, what happens to the PAC support staff when they break up? Referees, office staff, security, et cetera, is no different than a building, a business closing down unless they eventually add the Mountain West teams or whoever that will keep the PAC support staff going. However, the budget is changing because the television revenue will not be the same, and so I'm not sure exactly if there are cutbacks, furloughs, whatever the words are along the way, or just you don't have as many people.
In terms of the refs in particular, they'll be fine. Somebody else will pick them up. There's not like they're still the same teams that need games officiated. They'll be able to get jobs in other conferences. So I would assume that a lot of them will get jobs with the Big Ten because
the number of games will not change around the country.
So, you still need that number of refs. This isn't downsizing, like we're not going to make this many cars anymore, so we don't need these many people on the line. They're just going to make the cars at a different place. So they still need that many people. They'll just go somewhere else. And I don't know. I'll ask Mac about this. I'm curious on his opinion on it, but I do think that we are hurtling towards the point where we don't need conference officials. We need officials that are like essentially distributed out.
Like baseball eventually went from the American
football,
League to National
like
League.
everybody. Yeah, like they don't need Pac-12 officials and Big 12 officials and who's getting like, oh, it's a Pac-12 road game in a Big 12 stadium, so they're going to have Pac-12 officials in the Big 12 stadium to try to balance that out. Like, no, let's throw everybody in a big pot and let's assign crews out based on needs as opposed to – because the rules are all the same pretty much everywhere, right? So we're not – it's not like there's a DH and not a DH. Like there's all these weird things. Like just move on and put them all together.
Well, and then you have a championship game where it's like the Big Ten versus the SEC and some random Big 12 crew who obviously calls things slightly differently or is used to a slightly different style of football. And so, I think that getting everybody under the same umbrella would probably be a good idea rather than it's the Pac-12 crew coming in. And we know they have a stigma about them or the Big 12 crew, we know how they are. Yeah, if everybody's just kind of under the same umbrella, I don't know how all that works though. I don't know like why that is to begin with. So I don't know the method behind the madness there. I did want to address one thing. I don't pay attention to the chat a lot. What's up, chat? But I saw somebody say, I haven't seen 365 Sports address the talent disadvantages before when talking about Baylor and Texas, I guess, is what that was getting at. Did you happen to see that?
Yeah, there's been a couple, I think Ryan Pryor and a couple of others back and forth about.
Because it wasn't that obvious until now. It wasn't clear because we hadn't seen them play. They went in the transfer portal and they grabbed guys like Dominic Richardson and a bevy of others, and you say, okay, well, where were they? Where was talent needed? Okay, they needed talent here and there and this and that. And, not to sound like every player that they got was going to be an automatic surefire thing because I certainly never thought that way. But, you can put the rosters next to each other, but until you actually see them line up with each other, you don't really have any way of knowing. And, on paper, it looked like Baylor addressed some needs that they needed to address this offseason. But you're also going off of, well, if this guy gets better and that guy gets better and this guy does what he's supposed to do, and then when that doesn't happen that way, because naturally it's just not going to happen that way most of the time, you see that the result is not at all what you expected. And so, thought that this team would have more talent. Never thought they'd have more talent than Texas or even approach that really, but was just shocked by how much of a gap there is now. Like, I don't think anybody could have predicted that. Even with Texas going out and wheeling and dealing in NIL or having success with Sark's staff being really good or whatever, I don't think anybody was preparing for Baylor to have just the drop off. And part of the reason why we wouldn't have been talking about it is because they had talent the last couple of years, as evidenced by the NFL draft. And now you look up, and I don't know who off this team's getting drafted in the future. I don't know that there's really anybody on this team that's going to be a surefire draft pick. So, they do not have nearly the level after losing some of the guys of the past couple of years, and surprisingly, far less than even anticipated, and that's as big of a part of their problem right now as anything, because you can say what you want to about coaches and this and that, but I agree with Phil Bennett and some other people we've heard. Players eventually got to go make plays, man. Like, you know what? I said this during the Matt Rule era, when Matt Rule went 1-11 and then they went 7-6, and there was all the same people that are bitching now were bitching then, and you know what? Rightfully so in some cases, but there were some games there where a guy drops a pass, or a guy has a stupid 15-yard penalty. And, well, Matt Rule, and it's like, no, the players just didn't execute. Now, I'm tired of hearing Dave Aranda talk about executing as well, because that's now, like, you've lost like 8 of your last 9 games. That can only go so far. But at some point, like, Monterey Baldwin does have to catch the football. You know, like, somebody needs to make a tough catch for the quarterback to move the chains. And they are getting none of that from anybody across the board. So, the talent's not nearly where you thought it would be, and others are even farther than I thought that they would be as far as a gap goes. And quite simply, just, you know, the talent that you were expecting to be talent is just not living up to what what expectations were, and that's just a microcosm of where Baylor in particular finds itself right now.
Well, it's like the 2022 team was picked to win the conference. Texas was kind of still not – you didn't know who they were. Oklahoma had dropped the notch, even though they were only a play away from playing for the Big 12 championship. Baylor had most of their offensive line back with a wide zone scheme that appeared to be very sustainable, and they had the quarterback back who was dynamic in the Big 12 championship game. They were wins against Tech and Oklahoma on the road. They were pretty good about midway through the year, and then just the wheels fell off. It was absolutely a team that when you looked at voting for who was going to repeat, I picked Oklahoma State, by the way, last year, so I was wrong on them as much as I was on Baylor. But, yeah, it happens. Teams are sometimes overrated. Sometimes teams are underrated. That's why you had TCU last year, Baylor in 21, and right now, who knows what's going to happen in 23?
Yeah, and I think that, and I think it can just sneak up on you, where you think you bet on your guys and you believe that this is, but there were a couple things that didn't happen last year that I think hurt them, and you heard JJ talk about it earlier. They really thought the wide receivers that they had on the roster that they had brought in were going to take a step forward, and were just waiting for that moment. But looking back, you know, when you look at teams that like Ohio State, I'll use them as their example because they're just easy to describe as opposed to trying to get in the weeds here. When teams have good like position group rooms, and I'll use this for wide receiver, the 4th or 5th guys that are going to be like the third and second guys the next year when the other group graduates, like show up and make some plays occasionally. That didn't happen with Baylor in 2021. Like they got plays in the passing game from their 3 or 4 top guys. You know, 3 wide receivers in the tight end, and then those guys left. And in 22, Baylor bet that the next guys who hadn't really done much were going to step up, but you hadn't seen them do anything yet, and that hurt them. And then not only that, they didn't get deep into the transfer portal. I mean, they got Josh White, they got Jackson Player, and those didn't work out for them. And instead of getting also some guys that are developmental guys in the transfer portal, like they did, the plan with Sawyer Robertson was he's a guy who's in the transfer portal. They need a quarterback. He's not ready to start yet. Now he's had to because of injury, but you can put him on the roster and develop him. He can help you down the line, especially since he can't transfer again because the rules have changed. So that was a good move looking out in the future, but they did none of that in 2022. So some of those guys that would have been the Sawyer Robertson idea in 2023 that they didn't have those guys developed and ready to help now that would have been redshirt freshmen or redshirt sophomores in the wrong spot contributing. So now they even have a depth issue that they didn't realize that they would have.
So it's a gigantic mess, basically.
Yeah.
And it was, a little bit of overvaluing, overhyping, and overlooking, and just losing a lot of talent and not being able to just go and easily replace that. You can do that at Texas or Oklahoma far easier, or other places that are maybe just set up better than this one's currently set up, because clearly there's some issues as far as trying to get back to even that level they were a couple of years ago, and they're not anywhere close to that right now. So yeah, it's not a good situation, and that happens, but can't say that you didn't see it coming, but that just wasn't the expectation. You gave, I think everybody, a lot of people just gave Aranda and company the benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, they know what they're looking for. They know the types of talents they need, and that's why they get paid the big bucks. And as it turns out, I think that, like I said last week, they're on a bit of a different wavelength. Like, these guys might be good in a couple years, but you don't have a couple years.
No.
Like, you don't have a couple years to get that sophomore cornerback to being an All-American. He might be an All-American in a couple years, but you're not going to be here to see it if the things keep going the way that they're currently going. So, yeah, it's a debacle on their hands, to be sure, with this roster and the trajectory of the program right now. And it's going to be very interesting these next few weeks, because now you've played Texas. You don't play Oklahoma, but you do still play some really good teams, Kansas and K-State and West Virginia and so on. TCU. And those aren't teams that, the reason I bring up Texas, because they're expected to have more talent than you. Those other teams aren't necessarily expected to have more talent to you. So it's going to be really telling to me if they go out here these next few weeks against teams they should be even, if not, frankly, a little bit above in that regard, and they're still getting out-talented or outplayed. Does that make sense? Then that's going to send off 5-alarm fire bells, because then it's okay, wait a second. They're not only not where they were, they're falling behind West Virginia and, all due respect, KU and such, and that's just not where you thought you would be a couple years ago.
I just saw a highlight in the KU game in the win against Brigham Young where their corner came up and hit the running. What?
BYU,
and just exploded with his shoulder, the running back from BYU, who just fell down, as you could imagine. Ball came loose, picked it up, and ran it in for a touchdown. We saw that a lot in 21. Haven't seen much of that. And it's like someone, like I said, inept. Inept means that you just can't do much of anything right. And that's kind of what the case is. And Oklahoma State in that same boat. And maybe others that we will discuss. Texas Tech, I don't know about inept, but, they had 300 yards of total offense. Give West Virginia credit for that. But
that's another program. But that's another program where it's just wait a couple years. Just wait a couple years. And I know some Tech fans are already no, damn it. We were expecting year 2. We won 8 games last year. You got everybody back and a new recruiting class. And so Tech fans know the deal. It's just they're not as much on the timer as Aranda, who's in year 4, and has had not just a disappointing, but bad ending to last year, bad start to this year, and a streak now with, what are they, 1-3, and they were whatever it was. So they're 1-7 in their last 8 games or something like
Baylor?
that? Yeah.
They have not beaten a Division I team or an FBS team since, I guess,
Oklahoma last year.
Oklahoma. You brought that up, I think,
they're
over the weekend.
1-7.
Yeah.
So, that's the difference between them and Tech, is that Tech is it's not the start that you wanted. But I do know that there is some of that eye rolling when you start to hear, well, we got to just let our guys develop. And it's just, man, it's a now game, baby. With the transfer portal and all that, you got to win now. And you don't get 3, 4, 5 years to try and, get to, hit your stride. You got to show some progress. And I think that's the thing, is you're seeing regression. And that's the scary part.
And Raj B said Texas officially broke Baylor. I said something to the effect, I mentioned that they just, they took their soul. And they did in the game on Saturday. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5. One note about Florida State, Paul, to close it out. I know you'll love this. It's the first time they've won a true overtime game on the road in program history, and overtime began back in 1996.
Yeah, back in 1996, when they lost games, they lost them close, and when they won games, they punished people. So I'm not surprised. I don't know how many overtime games they've even really played, to be honest with you.
7-game losing streak to Clemson, right?
Oh, yes.
But it's the first true overtime win on the road against anybody in program history. Of course, overtime again didn't start in 1913, but in 1996.
From a fan perspective, it felt like Florida State's had a zit on their back for 7 years.
You can't reach.
And then finally it was gone.
Sense of relief. Yeah.
God, what a disgusting
interesting way of putting
example.
it, but yeah, I think we all kind of still understood it.
That's how it felt.
But when that moment happens, it does feel really, really good. All right, when we come back, Paul's top 5.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine. I'm sorry to the sponsors that the last thing I said before that was that comparison, but they are fantastic. They're absolutely Fantastic. 2 locations now, one down on Franklin Avenue. They're more about what's hip, what's trending on social media, what are the new cool, amazing things that they have. And then the kind of old school, the brass knuckle approach to things. I say that's not really how they are. They're great. At the original location, it's about local craft bourbons, craft beers. Look, right now, if you're into craft beer, it's autumn. It's rolling around. October 1st is this weekend. So it's time to get those Oktoberfest beers in you, and they've got them there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street. Same great customer service. The original location has a drive-through window that'll make your head spin. Just fantastic. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, now with 2 locations to serve you.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 coaches who would like to fast forward through year one. These are all year one coaches. They're all safe, but their years have been, I'll call it wonky. Some have had good moments. Some have had stress, but you can see when you're watching them how they are, riding through. Not everybody can be Deion Sanders, obviously, and roll through in year one just like it's sunshine and rainbows and dewy meadows. But number 5, Eric Morris at North Texas. This is a really good, interesting, innovative young coach that I think will do really well. But when you have coaching changes, especially in the transfer portal era at schools like North Texas, when you have guys that, may have committed to you and stayed with you through it and they can be playing up a conference level, you kind of get rated a little bit. It looks like their talent Baylor took one of their tight ends, for crying out loud. So you've got all this stuff that happens. I think right now they're not where they need to be, obviously talent-wise, and they're not who North Texas can be. But I think he wishes he could kind of fast forward in the recruiting season and kind of reset the roster there.
Yeah, I'm sure. They got off to a rocky start. I had somebody text me or tweet me a couple weeks ago like, oh, man, is UNT in trouble? They started off 0-2, and I don't think so. I mean, you lost to Cal for one. Like, that's not a team you're really expected to beat right out of the gates in your first game. But they bounced back and got a win in week 3, and then they were off, or I guess they're off this week or were off last week. What was that? They were off this past weekend. So they've had time to regroup and now can start the second half of their season and try to improve some. But, yeah, I definitely think this is a program that's anxiously awaiting the offseason to go and retool some more and put some more of their fingerprints on the roster and whatnot. I definitely think we'll see them all GJ, maybe not GJ Kenny or Dion level of active, but I definitely think he's going to change some things up when they get the opportunity. But right now, ride with who you got, and at least they got that first win under their belt. We'll see what they can do with that.
Number 4, for completely different reasons, David Braun at Northwestern gets the job in the middle of the summer as an interim, and obviously things have not gone well there for
they just won.
Well, I mean, yes, but if you look at the first, I mean, we're talking about the first 4 weeks, but I do think that if I'm him, just knowing, I just wish, just fast forward through this, see where I stand professionally and move on. This is not a position, and people can say what they want about, coaches on staffs that have to go through this and yada, yada, yada. This is not something professionally any of you would want, to have to step in an interim situation and try to make this work down the line, because it is not. It's maybe the most difficult thing in the world. And they're 2-2. They beat Minnesota. I know that, but I still think it's going to be an uphill climb as they've got Penn State next week. So,
well, I mean, the good news for him is there's absolutely zero expectations. I mean, nobody's expecting them to win any games, and they've already won 2. Given the circumstances, that they just said, "Screw it, we're not even playing." I think some people would have, been very understanding of that, given how much of a mess, that turned into right before the season. But, I mean, they got a big win over Minnesota in overtime, and that was a huge freaking comeback. I don't know if you guys paid attention to how that unfolded, but that was an incredible win for Northwestern to put up 21 in the fourth quarter and come back to force extras in the final frame and then go ahead and get the win. I mean, that was an incredible win for them. So, I mean, it's maybe – I don't know. It's hard. He's a guy who's just – kind of thrust into this situation that he was never supposed to be in. So I think the fact they're at 2-2 is actually pretty okay. We'll see what they do the rest of the way, but getting that Minnesota win was absolutely huge.
Yeah. Number 3, Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I think he maybe thought that he might be able to get a better quarterback in the portal than he did, because
wait a minute, what's the timeline of when Finley left? Was it before he was hired or after he was hired? Okay.
Well after.
Well,
but, yeah, and he pushed him out the door.
I know, but wouldn't they like to have him right now?
Oh, I think so. But I think that his confidence in letting TJ Finley walk and getting in the situation that it was buoyed by the fact that I think he thought, especially I think Grayson McCall was in the water at that point, that was going to happen for them. And then when it didn't, and they got Peyton Thorne, and that hasn't worked out, and Robbie Ashford, they knew exactly who he was. He's not changed that much over the year. That Auburn and have Philip Montgomery and an offense is supposed to go.
Dave Roberts
to struggle like Ron Roberts to struggle like they have on offense, and particularly with Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery in the same room was a little surprising to me. But I do think it's because I think, and this is just my theory, he thought he might be able to get more of a diamond in the rough out of the portal, and he didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. They've had a hard time scoring points. We'll see how SEC play goes for them the rest of the way, but don't know that anybody was expecting miracle work in year one. I was very interested in seeing how much of a job he could do, right away, or how much of an instant impact he can make. But, yeah, this is clearly a roster that needs some more retooling this offseason, need to figure out the quarterback position. But, maybe exactly how you would have planned out his first month, but they're also nowhere near where they're eventually going to be.
And that's why this is not like a hot seat list. This is just let me get through this kind of list. Number 2, Zach Arnett at Mississippi State. They've been uneven, to say the least, at Mississippi State. I know they're 1-3 or 2-2. I had this down and then I closed it, but they got absolutely rolled by LSU when LSU, at least as far as the rest of the teams in the SEC, Garrett, is kind of vulnerable, but LSU completely dominated them and looked like a different team than they have any other week this season against Mississippi State. They just don't, they seem really far away from the team that they looked like they were building at the end of last year. And I know they've gone through a lot there with losing Mike Leach and Zach Arnett taking over. They are 2-2, but it took them to overtime to get Arizona, and then they've lost the last two. They just don't look the same out there at all.
There's another guy that was stuck with a bad situation, although had a full offseason, but still you lose the guy that's the maestro, and he put in a tough situation. Not as much as Braun, but it's also even though the SEC West seems to be down a notch, it's still not easy when you're just not as good as everybody else.
Yeah. And number 1, Matt Rule at Nebraska. I know this year we experienced it here, but Nebraska is smoky, and it wasn't just because you were sitting over here while we're watching that game. Watching them is frustrating. Like they're a difficult watch on television because of the way that they play and the spurts at which they play. And then they'll show you something. They do, if they have 10-play drive, 9 of the plays are excellent, and then the 10th play is the dumbest thing you've ever seen. And that will change under Matt Rule. He will coach that out of them, but he is inheriting a team that's been a dumb team for a very long time. And, you don't just go from, completely dumb to completely smart in one offseason.
It's a football IQ problem.
Yeah.
It's a football IQ problem. They had a kick return or a punt return or a long, and there's you wait for the flag. It's like they just have forgotten how to win. They're 2-2. They're about to go 2-3 against Michigan, but they still are not a very smart team, and that's going to probably drive Matt Rule more crazy than even turnovers or losing.
Yeah, I remember talking to a high school coach one time, and this is not the same, but it's kind of a similar thing. That you don't really know until they're in situations like what you need to coach out of them, right? So you have to see people make the mistake to know you got to coach it out of them, because you can blanket coach things like, okay, we're going to not have holding penalties. We're not going to do this. We're going to do this. But you may not know what the actual reasons for until they're against a guy in a different jersey. And you're like, oh, well, this keeps happening. We got to coach that out of him. So that's what he's dealing with. This particular high school coach was sitting in front of a room of his players, and after they'd made like 4 bad plays on special teams, he goes, how many guys know the rules of special teams in the room? And like 4 guys raised their hand. He's like, that you can't just touch a punt when they punt it to us and leave it alone. We have to pick it up.
Yeah, you would hope that if anyone's playing the game, they would understand the game.
But, that was a high school explanation. But college, it's why are you committing these penalties? What bad habits do you have? You haven't seen them until you're going against a guy who's playing for a different team.
Well, they play Michigan this week, but after that, I'm going to be curious if they end up like 0-for-5 with losses to Illinois and Northwestern and reeling Michigan State and Purdue, who
teams that have been beating them lately, even though they're,
you can say year one all you want to, but they have no business like going through a losing streak past Michigan, and so I'm very curious of just where they are when they start to hit that Big Ten slate of teams that are similar, I guess, in some ways to them, or beatable, more beatable certainly than Michigan is. But yeah, that game this weekend in Lincoln should be a hot atmosphere. It's year number 1. We know that he takes some time. Don't know that he always should need to take as much time, a full year to get under your belt, and I think that's kind of where the concern may be. But they've definitely got some winnable games coming up after the Wolverines, so we'll see where they are, about the midway point.
I think the frustrating part about them is the fact that they're not beating the middle of the pack, which then puts them at the bottom of the pack, and that's who they've been for way too long. Thank you to everybody that's been a part of what we do. Those who watch or listen online or Sikkim 365 app, the chat room as well, the text line, and our great sponsors of what we do, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, Jack McKenzie, and Garrett Ross for what they do every single day. Tomorrow, Baylor Director of Athletics, Mac Rhodes, will be a part of the show, among others. That should be interesting, and we'll be back for that. For Paul Catalina and for Craig Smoak, the CW tonight, 365 Sports tonight at 10:30. Have a great night and good night.